across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I'm your host, Kevin O'Sullivan, and I'll be with you for 3 unmissable hours of breaking news, challenging views and dynamic debate. Get involved, get stuck in, get on the phone and call me on 03444991000 or WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I guarantee I'll play your message out. It is Wednesday, June the 11th. Here's what's coming up. Rachel from Accounts and her spending review. Fantasy economics that will require significant tax rises. If you didn't laugh, you'd cry. £280 million to the useless Border Security Command to carry on not smashing the gangs. And a pledge to get all asylum seekers out of hotels. And I quote, by the end of this Parliament. That's 4 years. Not exactly working at the speed of light then. And where are they going to go? Into social housing that should go to Brits. I'd hazard a guess. Not that anyone's telling you from Labour. Is that the answer? Because Labour Minister James Murray refused to answer that very simple question to Jeremy Kyle an astonishing 9 times. Jez asked him 9 times, where are these hotel asylum seekers going to go when you kick them out of the hotel? Where are they going to go? 9 times. No answer. They haven't worked this out at all. What we got today, folks, was just a load of words. More announcements, more announcements. If any of this spending review actually ever comes into play, it actually becomes real, there's only one way they can fund it, and that's us. We'll have to pay for it. There will be more tax rises, or they just won't really bother with most of the stuff that they said today, because that's what this government does, isn't it? Just makes announcements. Anyway, how pathetic is that? 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, as the incompetent Chancellor was making promises she can't possibly keep, apart from, of course, pouring 30 billion more pounds into the NHS money pit, you might as well set fire to it. What a ridiculous thing to do. The government decided this was a great day to bury bad news. Suddenly, we learned that frightful Foreign Secretary David Lammy has handed control of Britain's border to the British territory of Gibraltar to, naturally, Brussels. Yes, from now on, the EU, the European Union, controls the border to Gibraltar. And so Labour's betrayal of Brexit continues apace. 0344 499 1000. Still with Lammy. What on earth is the point of the UK imposing sanctions on 2 hawkish members of the Israeli government, alleging that they are inciting violence against the Palestinian people and, in the process, alienating our allies Israel and America and hindering the peace talks? Why didn't he just shut up? Why didn't we just... You didn't have to do this. It's ridiculous. Why did the British government do this? 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, Sadiq Khan's spectacularly undeserved knighthood, presumably for services to ruining London. Tonight, my show, The Political Asylum, is unknighting this hopeless little pupped-up pipsqueak of a mayor. Never will we call the man who destroyed this city Sir. No, sir. Plus the farce of Britain's deportation system after we revealed the dramatic escape of the runaway after he broke free from his government minders. It turns out that this is far from a lone incident. Happens all the time, apparently. Stay tuned for the dismal details. 0344 499 1000. Also, women's rights campaigner Kelly Jane Keane on the burqa. She wants it banned. Do you? 0344 499 1000. 1,000. And finally, those LA riots. As Trump sends in the troops and Los Angeles burns, and California Governor Gavin Newsom starts crying. What's the truth here? Doesn't the president have the right to pursue his mass deportation policy? That's what he was elected on. Or, as he threatens similar military intervention in San Francisco, Atlanta and New York, is Trump deliberately picking fights with Democrat cities in a bid to make them look even worse? Is he, as Newsom dramatically, sensationally claimed, staging an assault on democracy? We'll get both sides of the argument. 03444991000. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Wednesday night together. We've got a hell of a lot to get through tonight, so let's go straight over to my guest for the first 60 sizzling minutes. She is Talk's fabulous international editor, Isabelle Oakshot. Welcome, Isabelle.
Good evening. I'm feeling a little bit gloomy. I don't know about you. It just seems to be so much bad news today.
Well, I'm tempted to say, so what's new? But you're right, it's a particularly dismal day. Look, let's kick off with the spending review and elements of it. Mostly, I say this spending review was just a load of words. Classic of this government, promising this, announcing this. In 10 years, this will happen. In 5 years, this will happen. It's just word salad, word soup. So I'm not putting too much store by any of it, apart from the fact that if Rachel from Accounts is to fund all of her promises today, there's only one way to pay for it. And that's you, me, and every person in this country. Yeah. Tax rises, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think she's sort of stopped denying that's what's coming. And you just wonder how much more people can take. You know, in the end, that whole thing about the Laffer curve, there comes a point where you tax people so much that you don't end up actually as an exchequer bringing much more in, because people simply stop trying so hard or spending as much, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, look, I listened to the whole ghastly thing. It was so boring, wasn't it? I mean, it really was boring. It was a lot of rehashed announcements. You know, they've already been going on for a long time about defence, you know, infrastructure projects, blah, 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 de blah. The thing that stood out for me was this purportedly good news about them stopping using asylum hotels in 4 years' time.
That's shocking. That is shocking news. It really is shocking.
What? You know, I see that people have been emblazoning headlines going, you know, breaking news, the government's going to stop using asylum hotels in 2029, as if that's a good thing. No, what that means is that they have no plan whatsoever to stop the boats between now and then. I mean, asylum hotels are only ever supposed to be a temporary situation while the occupants of those asylum hotels have their claims assessed. So if the government was doing its job properly, first of all, they wouldn't be here in the first place, but they would be processing those people out of hotels very quickly, either into permanent accommodation because they've been granted refugee status, or what you and I would like to see more of, actual deportations. But by saying they've got another 4 years of this, are effectively saying we're going to be letting a whole load more people arrive by boats, or we're not going to be processing anyone fast. That's the only two explanations.
Absolutely.
You know what's going to happen in 2029? They're just going to grant everybody that's still in the asylum hotels, they're just going to grant them refugee status.
Absolutely.
So they then get... Yeah.
Well, I want to tell the audience to listen to what you're saying, and we've got to think about this. As you quite rightly say, the most striking element of her statement on the asylum seeker crisis was that there was no word of any solution to the migrant crisis. So what she effectively said is, we may move the pieces around a bit, but the migrant crisis is going to continue because we have no solution to stopping the boats. So, but worse than that, She said, I promise you that we will clear all asylum seekers out of, I think it's about 200 hotels at the moment, something like 30 to 40,000 at the moment, by the end of this Parliament, which, if you think about it, is a very, very unambitious pledge within 4 years.
Hopeless.
Yeah, so
absolutely hopeless.
And this is the doozy. She refused to say, or she didn't say, where are they going to go. Now, earlier today, your friend of mine, our colleague Jeremy Kyle, had on the show the dynamic government Labour Minister, James Mr. Charisma Murray. And Jez quite rightly said, well, OK, you're going to get the asylum seekers out of the hotels. Where are they going to go? And he didn't want to answer this question. And just before I play you the farce, it was almost a Michael Howard situation. You know, remember when Jeremy Paxman asked Michael Howard, the then Tory leader, a question about prisons. I think it was 14 times, and 14 times he refused to answer, just danced around it. Well, Jez asked James Murray 9 times, where are you going to put the asylum seekers when you get them out of hotels? Now, before we play this, I'll just preface this and let the audience, and you already know this, Isabelle, this is where they're going to go, folks. If Labour even come close to keeping this promise, they're going to go into social housing. Social housing that should go to British people first. British people will take second place to asylum seekers who came here illegally, and indeed are here arguably illegally. They haven't been granted permanent status yet. So people waiting to get social housing, council housing around the country, if you're British, go to the end of the queue, because asylum seekers are going to get the houses that you dreamed of. But here is Jez quizzing James Murray on Drive about where will the government put these asylum seekers that they promise they're going to get out of hotels. Have a look.
What is your plan? How are you going to stop the boats? How are you going to... OK, stop. Let me have my point. Answer 2 really simple questions very simply. Where are these asylum seekers going? It's a simple question. And what's your plan to stop them coming here in the first place? That's what people want, James. Where are they going?
Well, some of them will be sent home if their applications are rejected, and we want to bring down that backlog. That's the first duty, and that's what we've been doing since the election last year. And what we're saying is, for those people who are being processed, they're waiting for a decision to be taken. It is unacceptable to be spending so much money on expensive hotel accommodation.
So where are they going to go? For not the some who get deported. What about the not some who are going to still be here or are not going in hotels? It's not a difficult question, James, with respect. Where are these people going?
I said earlier on in our conversation today that there would have to be alternative accommodation for them.
Memo to Labour, don't send James Murray out on the media round again on a day like this. In other words, they've got no answer, and I can answer it, as I just did. If they come anywhere near to keeping this promise, which, by the way, for the record, they just won't. It's another one of these. Oh, we're going to get everybody out of these hotels by the end of this Parliament. It's just an announcement. It's not a fact. No doubt the newspapers tomorrow will act like it's a fact. Oh, great news, asylum seeker hotels to be clear. Well, they won't be, but that's another issue. Even if they come close to keeping this promise, where do they go? They go into social housing. They go into council houses. They go into houses that surely primarily, first of all, should be for British people, but British citizens will take second place. That is the only way they can keep this promise, and that is an absolute scandal.
Yeah, it is a complete and utter scandal. And so far from beginning their progress to winding back the use of asylum hotels, not a week goes by when I don't hear of some other landlord that has decided to take that dirty dollar as it were, and sign up to turn their little hotel or their big hotel into illegal migrant accommodation. They are expanding currently the use of hotels, trying to find more premises. So that tells you everything you need to know. This is only going to get worse. They don't have a plan. And by the way, this is a point that people don't seem to make very often. It's a very obvious one. There's nothing new about this crisis. How come Labour didn't have a proper plan when they'd been observing this car crash for, well, ever since just after Brexit, basically? How could you come into power and not have a plan? I tell you what, if I were in charge, there would be no more use of asylum hotels within months, never mind within years.
Turn the bloody boats around. Stop them coming. Come on, it's ridiculous the way neither of these main parties will dare to address that obvious fact. Stop the migrants, stop the boats. Otherwise, we are going to be stuck in this crisis forever. Talking of which, this is outrageous, this. Right, we all know, one of the great real-life comedy shows. It's called the Border Security Command Follies.
Yeah.
Now, that was the organisation that was set up almost immediately after we made the mistake of voting Labour into power last July. They've got a £200,000 a year commander, and I don't know how many staff they've got, but some point last year they were given 175 million or 200 million pounds worth of high-tech equipment, surveillance equipment, detection equipment to try and smash the gangs, find the gangs and smash the gangs, drones, all that sort of thing. Well, here we are 11 months on, and you know the answer to the question, how many gangs have they smashed? It's zero, none whatsoever. So what have they done today? They've given, what has she done? They have given this pathetic, useless Border Security Command another £280 million worth of cutting-edge equipment, state-of-the-art surveillance equipment, drones to smash the gangs. They're never going to smash the gangs. They haven't smashed any gangs. £280 million. Again, you might as well pour that straight down the drain and set fire to it. Now, why have they done this? Why have they done this? This is an absolute scandal, a disgrace beyond all disgraces. They've done it to try to justify their failed strategy, their failed policy. It hasn't worked. Everybody knows. Never mind the gangs. You've got to stop the migrants. Stop the migrants and the gangs will cease to exist. They're doing it the wrong way round. They can't find the gangs. So we know this hasn't worked. So what they've done today is to imply to us, well, it's a great strategy, it's a good policy, it just needed more money. So they have taken £280 million of our money, British taxpayers' money, just to justify the folly of their ludicrous, ineffective, completely failed policy to smash the gangs. That's what they've done. That, again, utter scandal. This Labour government, there seem to be no depths below which they won't plumb.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't believe it when I heard that they were giving more money to this outfit. I mean, I'm not aware of a single achievement so far by this outfit. I mean, if you gave many right-thinking people a fraction of that amount of money, they could achieve something quite demonstrable, which is simply to puncture the boats that are just lying around before they actually get to take to the waters. No one gets harmed in that process apart from the evil people smugglers. And it's a very simple and cost-effective thing. You don't need any fancy high-tech equipment to make holes in boats. You simply take a big pair of scissors and off you go. I'm not actually being funny. Why is that not something that can be done? It's a very straightforward way of disabling the operation.
So I want to ask the audience, give me a ring about this. Basically what we're talking about here is this Gormless government doubling down on a failed strategy, digging deeper into the gaping hole of a policy that demonstrably doesn't work and pouring more money into the abyss, just to try to prove that they're on the right track. They are hopelessly on the wrong track, and they're wasting £280 million of our money to try and justify their uselessness. What do you think about that, folks? 03444991000. When we come back, Isabelle, we're going to talk about the knighting of Sadiq Khan. I've just unknighted him, by the way. We have a policy on this show. Never will we refer to Sadiq Khan as Sadiq. No sir, no sir, no sir for Sadiq on this show. He doesn't deserve it. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the shambles, the chaos, the dangerous chaos that he effectively has turned London into. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
The chances of her having cleared out the asylum hotels and all the houses of multiple occupation that should be occupied by British citizens rather than illegal migrants, I think is 1 in a million, frankly. But look, I wish them well. Obviously, the whole British people would like them to get a grip of the illegal migrant crisis. She talked, I mean, I did have to laugh in the chamber when she said they were getting a grip of borders. They talked about extra hundreds of millions spending on border security command. That basically means hundreds of millions more cash to the French.
The great con is upon us. It started with Rishi Sunak when he began to say, I'm fast-tracking numbers of people through the asylum process. Is they're shifting the concern from national government and the Home Office onto local authorities and council tax and council housing and social housing. Yeah. And that is disgraceful.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabelle Oakshot. Well, Isabelle, talking about international affairs, this is what I believe in the game of political spin doctoring is called a good day to bury bad news. And while Rachel Reeves was standing at the dispatch box in the Commons making promises she can't keep, quietly we learn that David Lammy has been in Gibraltar, and indeed he has negotiated away Britain's control of the border to Gibraltar. It's between Spain and so Britain controlled that border because it's a British territory. So if you're British, you could go straight in, basically. Now Lammy has quietly handed control of the British border to a British territory, to Brussels, to the EU. I call that, well, you can call that a betrayal of Brexit. I call it treachery to this country. These people, I mean, they are just ignoring Brexit. They're negotiating it away. They are pursuing their dream of being a part of Europe and trading away our territory, Gibraltar. It's outrageous.
I mean, I don't understand why it was considered necessary. I'm not aware that there's been some huge problem with the existing arrangements. And all it does is give voters the impression that this government is hell-bent on diminishing Britain. That's what they seem to be out to do, to make us smaller, weaker, less significant. And I'm afraid I don't trust David Lammy. What the heck is he going to do next? You know, I can just see him over the next 3 or 4 years going around every bit of remaining British territory overseas and ceding it. And to make matters worse, perhaps charging the British taxpayer to divest that territory. It's just bewildering.
It really is. He just keeps doing things which are obviously sort of virtue signalling, you know, sort of halo polishing. So, you know, I'm going to discuss later on with Jake Wallace-Simons this bizarre business of Britain sanctioning these 2 hawkish Israeli MPs, elected members of the Israeli government, you know, a very hard line on how they feel that the Palestinians should be treated. They want to stop aid. They want to rack up the aggression against them. You know, they've got a right to think that. And we've sanctioned them. We've suddenly just said, right, you're banned from coming to Britain. I'm sure they had no plans to come here anyway. And any assets you have in Britain, I don't know whether they do or not, they've frozen, you know. So the chances are these people, they definitely had no plans to come to Britain. And I would suggest there's very slim chance either of them got any assets in Britain. So why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? Because we have alienated in the process our 2 allies, Israel and America. America's furious about it. So you're right, Lammy goes round, you know, making these grand liberal left-wing gestures. Aren't I wonderful? Isn't Britain wonderful? Be kind, Britain, and all that. You know, and sort of hampering our ability to exist as a sensible participant in world affairs. There's no need to impose those sanctions, whatever you think of those 2 guys. Absolutely, if you didn't impose those sanctions, nobody would notice the difference. And there's no need to negotiate away Britain's control of the Gibraltar border. Why are we doing this? I mean, you know, we have had control of that border always. So why suddenly they were going, oh, well, it's much easier for the people of Gibraltar. Well, why didn't they do it before? Why didn't they do it 50 years ago? Why didn't they do it 100 years ago? I mean, you know, why? Why is he doing this?
I don't know why he's doing it. I mean, among the many awful stories today was another one, kind of David Lammy linked story about how the people of Mauritius have now got a massive income tax cut.
Because of us.
Thanks to us, because we're giving billions to Mauritius to give away the Chagos Islands. I mean, I heard Keir Starmer responding on this in Prime Minister's questions today, where he completely falsely suggested that the future of our military base shared intelligence arrangement with America in Diego Garcia, part of the Chagos, was in some kind of imminent danger. I mean, this is complete and utter nonsense. I would go so far as to say it was a lie. There was never, ever any suggestion that there was going to be a breakdown in our intelligence sharing arrangements with the Americans on the Chagos Islands. It's an absolute fallacy. And yet he just said it anyway. Yeah, and I think this one's going to build, by the way, the idea that these Mauritians are having a massive tax cut at the expense of the British people. I think that's a story that is going to become increasingly corrosive for this government.
That will be the same Keir Starmer, our fantastic Prime Minister, who told the nation that China was very much against us giving the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. China, of course, is Mauritius' best friend, which is why the Chagos deal is so strategically dangerous. Starmer told the Commons and told the nation that China was against this, and that's why he was proud to have forged this independent British line and gone ahead and given away the Chagos Islands anyway, despite what the Chinese think. It's an absolute claptrap. The Chinese are thrilled that their best friend, Mauritius, has got control of these very strategic islands that we, for some reason, just gave them. They're just lying to us.
Yeah, for those of our listeners who are not also watching, we're just showing some pictures of Keir Starmer there and his front bench. I'm actually beginning to get to the point, Kev, where I struggle to look at them. I'm feeling so much disdain for them. I've never felt that, really, about our politicians, our leaders. I don't want to feel that way. You know, I know that most people go into politics, in this country anyway, to try to make Britain a better place. But I'm looking at these people and beginning to wonder how it is that they're either so completely stupid, or is there some kind of conspiracy here to do the exact opposite of what would make our country better?
I think they are intellectually challenged ideologues. You know, they're ploughing down a socialist path. They basically don't like anyone who's got any money, property, their own company, has made a success of it. They don't like people like that. They want to take their money and give it all to people who've never done anything worthwhile in their lives. It is getting very, very worrying. Let's go to break, and when we come back, I want to talk about a number of things. The Sun has got some very good pictures. Just briefly, we'll return to the migrant crisis. I'll show the audience some pictures which reveal that by tomorrow, I guarantee you, it's going to be another one of those big days when hundreds of migrants come across the channel. So we'll have a look at those pictures, and then we're going to talk about London. We're going to talk about Sadiq Khan getting knighted. As I say, not on this show. He is unknighted on this show. And we're going to ask why. Why on earth he got knighted. And he said that, by the way, that when the king knighted him, I don't know whether this story is true, because, you know, I don't really particularly trust anything that comes out of Sadiq Khan's mouth. But he said that when the king sort of stubbed him on the shoulders, he apologised to Sadiq Khan for this honour taking so long to be bestowed. Now, if the king said that to him, that makes me almost as angry with the king as I am about him always preaching green claptrap at us. I'm getting worried about this king. But anyway, we'll have a look at some of those pictures, and then we'll talk about London and not Sir Mr. Sadiq Khan when we come back. Stay where you are.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, I'm still with Talk's international editor Isabelle Oakshot. Just before we get to London, Isabelle, this is here's pictorial evidence, courtesy of The Sun. I think these pictures will be all over the paper tomorrow. That the smashing the gang strategy isn't being spectacularly successful. So here they are. I think there are some pictures of the police standing on the that's the French police looking at migrants leaving. I think there's some more pictures. So the Sun has got pictorial evidence, there they are, that quite a few migrants left the northern beaches of France on small boats. There they go, on their way to Britain. That's today. So I suspect, we haven't got the figures yet, but I suspect what we'll be talking about is probably hundreds of migrants coming across the Channel yet again. So and still they come. Let's get to London now. As we were just saying, Mr. Sadiq Khan, basically he presides over a city that is riven by knife crime, violence, lawlessness, mass homelessness, and more and more migrant tent cities. There he is with his little knighthood, Mr. Sadiq Khan. He's never going to be Sir on this show, doesn't deserve it. And the crime is getting ridiculous. Now, today, Isabelle, just to highlight how bad this is, Angela Rayner announced that she was going to decriminalise homelessness. So actually, going back to the 19th century, there's a Vagrancy Act, which actually, somewhat absurdly, makes homelessness against the law. Now, to be fair to the police, they don't go around arresting people just because they haven't got a roof over their heads. In fact, as long as they're not in too awful a place, they tend to let them carry on. They've got to sleep somewhere, I guess. Now, so people say, well, it's just right. It's a good idea to decriminalise homelessness because it's a silly law. Well, let me tell you, it isn't. Because by decriminalising it, it will mean that the power will render the police powerless to move people on, to move homeless people on, to move tents on, to move migrants on, and so on and so forth. And this is what's happened in America. The Democrat cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Atlanta, and so on and so forth, they've brought in these laws, or they've lifted the vagrancy laws, so it is no longer illegal to camp on the street, camp in public places, and so on and so forth. And so in LA, for example, if you come back from the Santa Monica coastline, blocks on end, 5, 6, 7 blocks, total million-dollar houses, multi-million-dollar houses, just surrounded by junkies, tents, drunks, vagrants. So what Angela Rayner has done today is essentially to render the police as powerless as the American police. So when you see the tent city in Park Lane, well, it shouldn't be there anyway, and you think, well, the police should move them on, they won't be able to now. So this is what I think Angela Rayner, talking about this government, not particularly bright ideologues, I think that she looks across at America, she sees LA, sees all those rich people having their lives ruined, their nice houses surrounded by tents and junkies. So she sees this as a decent attack on wealth and privilege, so she thinks we'll have a bit of this here. That's what's going on there. But this city, London, is descending into a complete shambles. I mean, there are more and more homeless people all over the place. As I just said, Park Lane, our most exclusive address. Rich people from around the world staying in the Dorchester Hotel, the Hilton, the Inn on the Park. Their view is across Hyde Park, but in the middle, before they get to Hyde Park, there are hundreds of migrants' tents. That is a snapshot of Sadiq Khan's London.
I mean, I think this is such a bad move. I don't want to see any homeless people on the streets because it's awful for them primarily, but it's also a terrible, terrible, grungy look for a city. You know, any homeless person, anyone who's sleeping rough, is a symbol of failure of public authorities. And I mean, the truth is that homelessness is an incredibly complex problem, and the majority of people that sleep rough have a bunch of quite difficult to tackle problems, whether it's addiction, mental health issues, so on and so forth. It's not just a question of let's offer them a council accommodation and everything will be fine. There are certain people who are very, very difficult to accommodate, even if they're offered masses of help. I'm less worried about those poor people than I am about the spectre of bunches of professional vagrants, whether they're Romanian, Albanian, Bulgarian. I'm not in any way being racist when I say this, but it's an actual fact that there are professional beggars operating in gangs in central London and doubtless in city centres elsewhere. We should not be enabling those people to carry on their lifestyle. We should be doing the precise opposite and clearing out those encampments. And in the end, what do we want our streets to look like? Do we want them to look like this? Are we just going to accept that people are going to sleep rough? Or are we going to keep trying to eliminate it? You'll never eliminate it completely for the reasons, as I said. There are certain people who are almost impossible to house or help. Doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying.
Yeah.
But just saying that we're going to decriminalise it only sends out totally the wrong message to the police and makes their life harder.
And people like Angela Rayner think so. That will show those rich people in their mansions all moaning about poor people who haven't got a home. Well, that isn't the way to approach this. As you say, this is, if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, I'd have said without fear of contradiction, this is the greatest city on the face of the earth. I've lived in a few of them. This is the greatest, but it isn't anymore. Keir Starmer has made some contribution, but Sadiq Khan has ruined this city. Let's talk a little bit about the crime. The crime is off the scale now. It's dangerous for women to walk through the streets. It's dangerous for anyone to walk through the streets. There's riven with knife crime, as I said, violence, lawlessness, shoplifting, people being steamed, shops being steamed, these cities everywhere. Now, but phone theft, it's just off the scale. Now, I looked up some statistics, and something like a phone is reported stolen in London every 6 minutes. That's reported. The vast majority of people don't bother to report their phones being stolen because they know, quite rightly, that the police won't do anything about it. So if you think about it, a phone is reported stolen every 6 minutes. Most people don't report it. So what we've got here is essentially, literally constant phone thefts going on 24/7, unpunished. And last year, 80,000 phones were stolen in the capital, and that's 16,000 more than the year before. And that's a 244% increase since 2020. So this is an absolute epidemic. There's a picture of it happening there. Now, you have a colleague, I think last week, who had his phone snatched from his hand outside Waterloo Station. I'm looking at my excellent producer here, Samara Gill. A few nights ago, she came out of South Kensington Station. Two moped riders, bang, smashed her, took her phone. And Mike Graham, happened to him a couple of months ago. Same deal. Standing by a bus stop, guy comes past on a motorbike, steals it out of his hand. This is happening, I mean, as I just said, literally every minute. And nothing is being done about it.
It is so shocking. I know people might think it's not the biggest thing in the world, and it isn't, but it's what has become of a city where this is just baked in, where this is happening all the time. And when it happens to you, it's tremendously shocking and very, very disabling. We all know the extent to which we rely on our phones. Most of us don't have a backup phone just waiting to pull out in these situations. Your phone's gone, you've lost your access to a load of things, your bank accounts get frozen, you can't contact anybody, in many cases, it becomes very difficult to do your job properly. Most people rely on their phones for work. And yeah, you can sort it out in 24 hours or 48 hours. It's extremely stressful during that time, but it's quite traumatizing. And it's grotesque. It's a relatively new thing, and it's just escalating and escalating. And I think people might wonder, well, how do we stop this? And the answer is that you've just got to have a kind of zero tolerance, a really low threshold for punishing this type of thing. I don't see how, I always bring out the case of Lucy Connolly, whose words on Twitter, ill-advised, had no victims at all. How is that 3 years in jail? And swiping someone's phone is nothing, not even, community anything. It's just accepted with a shrug. This is what it is. I mean, when my researcher reported his incident to police who are not too far away at the scene, within a few minutes, someone else came up and reported exactly the same thing. It's completely out of control. And it's a culture. This is about a culture. Where I am this evening in Dubai, I was walking down the street the other day. I saw a mobile phone on a bench. It was just on a bench. I was like, oh, there's a phone. Nobody even considered picking up that phone and swiping it. Somebody had just put it down while they were doing something else, and there it stayed until that person came back to get their phone. And you see that in restaurants, you see it everywhere. People put things down, whether it's a phone or a wallet. Nobody takes it. It's not a thing. That's a cultural thing. It's about respect for each other and respect for the law. And
Sadiq Khan, Mr. Sadiq Khan, is presiding over this metropolitan decline. That's what we're seeing. This city is decaying, and it's his fault. Let's go to a break. When we come back, you and I, you broke the story the other day of this extraordinary runaway, a deportee, an Indian guy who was being deported back to India, is escorted by government officials, government guards, and he broke free. We think he broke out of the loo. They say that's not the case. Anyway, he got off the plane. He managed to get off the plane and was chased all the way across the runway as busy, this is Heathrow Airport. They finally caught him. And we thought that's a scandal, an absolute snapshot of the ongoing shambles of our migrant crisis and our inability to get rid of these undesirables that we don't want in this country. Well, it turns out that story, there we're looking at it now, look, there it is running across, these very unfit people trying to give chase. Well, it turns out that this is far from a lone incident. Yeah. It's quite common for this to happen, for these deportees to break free. So let's go to break, and when we come back we'll talk about this.
really interesting. He said the biggest success of the British state over the last few years has been education. Education standards now in this country are far, far higher than they were even in the 90s. And that is because there's been a consistent policy. Blair set up academies, Gove put the rocket boosters under them. They've been continued through 14 years of Tory government, and they're just about surviving Bridget Phillipson. But that is because there is a single line there of policy. That is one thing you can see, because there have been consistency. Consistency in policy making is so important, because there's been so much chopping and changing of not just personalities, of directions, and that's the problem.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabelle Oakshot. So we're going to talk about these deportations, Isabelle, in just a second. I should flag up as well, when we talk about the migrant crisis, the Sun's on a bit of a roll with revelations about this ongoing car crash of a shambles. It is reporting tomorrow that illegal foreigners are now paying £20,000 to fly into the UK with fake papers before disappearing into the rapidly increasing population. Others, apparently after clearing customs, ditch their fake or forged documents and head straight for the nearest immigration centre and claim asylum. So that's happening. And also, apparently, more and more migrants are once again, forget the small boats, well, don't, obviously, are once again climbing into the back of lorries. So that is rearing its ugly head as well. You know, so we must remember when we go on about the small boat crisis, this isn't the only method of illegal entry into this country, and the Sun is highlighting that, particularly this new method, which is paying a hell of a lot of money, £20,000 to fly into Britain with false documents. Some of them get through, others don't, but you know, once they've touched down, you know what it's like. You can't get rid of them. But anyway, let's now talk about these deportees. When we finally do get rid of, here's one. This is the Indian guy being chased by some very, very unfit officials. He finally just gave up, and they got him back into custody. But apparently this is far from rare. A guy appeared on Mike Graham's show the other day, and his name, he's a former detainee custody officer called Gary Costin, and he told Talk that there was a list of shame that has unfolded over the last 3 years of several escape attempts that just about were foiled, but the most worrying one was a Somalian on his way to Somalia, touched down in Turkey, managed to sort of get off the plane and run away, never to be seen again. And now this is all the work of the government subcontracting company, Mighty. Mighty are the people who supply these guards. Now, Mighty gave us a statement the other day about the Indian farce. We've got another story here. Another migrant deportee managed to push past the air bridge and get among passengers, was eventually found, I believe, hiding in the loo of an airport abroad. Another escaped through a window, and we don't know whether or not he was ever found. So it really is a mess. And it seems to me that Mighty, they gave us a statement about this Indian guy, but perhaps Mighty aren't doing the greatest of jobs.
So Gary Costin, who told us that there have been numerous escape attempts and some successful escapes, is a friend of our programme. Some of our listeners might remember he was the one that was totally unfairly sacked after being accused of bullying, in quotes, for sharing a tweet which had some news about the Home Office in it. And you'll remember he gave a pretty heart-rending interview. He's a very, very long-standing and loyal deportation escort officer effectively for the Home Office, and he was devastated to lose a job that he did so well. And he's lifted the lid on a wider scandal here. Mighty not only appears to treat people like Gary, loyal staff, appallingly, but is also, frankly, on occasion quite incompetent. And it's because they appear to be watering down, we haven't put this to them, but that we're told by more than just Gary Coston that they're watering down the way that they restrain deportees, you guessed it, because of their human rights. So they don't want to use too many restraints because it might be a little bit hurty. And what happens then? You get people breaking for freedom.
Apparently, there's a statutory number of pain points we're allowed to apply. So a pain point is a restraint around the midriff. That's what our Indian guy was wearing when he broke free. So it's obviously not a particularly good restrainer. But you can't, if you're going to restrain around the midriff, you're not allowed to put handcuffs on. If you put handcuffs on, you're not allowed to put midriff restraints on. To which I would say, why not? It's ridiculous. If you could use both, then they wouldn't escape, would they?
Well, there are bits of that waist belt that have hand restraints on them, but they weren't being used in this case, probably for the same reason. So these escort agents have lots of tools at their disposal, but many of them are very, very inexperienced, as we saw from the footage there, simply physically not up to the job of restraining what are typically pretty fit and well young men in their 20s and 30s. It's not much good if you're not able to actually cope with the physical demands there, because a great number of these people don't actually want to be deported. Funny that. And so they literally physically kick off. So I think Mighty has some very serious questions to answer. I'm doing a lot of digging on their performance on deportations and hope to be able to come back with some more revelations.
Yeah, the inappropriately named Mighty company, the not so mighty. But if you think about it, we've been talking tonight, as we do so often, about the shambles of our migrant crisis, the ridiculous nature of all the stages. They come over in these small boats, they don't get stopped, we put them in hotels, we give them free everything, we never deport them, and when we finally get the very small number that we actually finally manage to deport and we get them onto a plane, they keep escaping. We can't even deport them properly.
What a farce.
It really is the border farce. Yes, it is. Listen, Isabelle, great to talk to you as always. We'll talk again next week. That is Isabelle Oakshot, our international editor, talking about a lot of issues that you probably want to get involved in. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Did Sadiq Khan deserve a knighthood, given the state of London, the migrant crisis, this nonsense, the more money for the Border Security Command? 0344 499 1000. Get on the phone. Kelly J. Keane is next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the second hour of tonight's very busy political asylum. Now, in just a little while, I'm going to be talking about something I referred to earlier with Isabelle. This business of Britain imposing sanctions on these two politicians, part of the Israeli government. They're elected members of the government. We've sanctioned them for inciting violence against Palestinians, allegedly, banning them from travelling here, and also seizing or freezing their assets in Britain. I've got a feeling this is completely performative insofar as I don't think they have any plans to come to Britain. And I'm not sure, but I don't think they have any assets in Britain. So it's just virtue signaling. Oh, look, we're putting sanctions, aren't we great? You know, genocide and all this kind of stuff. I want to ask Jake Wallace-Simons, the former Jewish Chronicle editor and author, why it is we're doing this. I mean, all we've done is alienate and infuriate our two allies, Israel and America, and we've achieved nothing except for saying, we put sanctions on them. It just seems to me, scratch the surface of most Labour politicians, certainly this government, certainly this cabinet, and you get a really kind of rather anti-Israel feeling. Maybe I'd go so far as to say potentially anti-Semitic. This government doesn't like Israel, it's quite clear, and that's what I think this is all about. Also, we're talking about Gibraltar. Again, David Lammy, as we discussed again with Isabelle, just like kind of handing control of our border. The British border to a British territory will now be controlled by the EU. Why? Before we get to any of that, though, let's go back to the ban the burqa debate. Look, I'm going to go over to my guest now. I know what she thinks about it. She is women's rights campaigner Kelly J. Keane. Welcome, Kelly J.
Hi.
Now, before we start talking about this burning issue of the moment, really, this is Sarah Poachin. She is the Reform UK MP, the newest MP, the new Runcorn MP. She stood up in Parliament last week and put the cat among the pigeons by terrifying Keir Starmer and saying, would he consider banning the burqa, following several European countries, France, Austria, Denmark, and actually quite a few Muslim countries. Would he consider it? Of course, he was too scared to answer the question. But here's Sarah subsequently, Kelly, came onto my show, and here she is talking about her stance on the burqa.
The burqa is a profoundly misogynistic item, in my view, and very offensive to our British culture. Keir Starmer himself in the last week has talked about this country being an island of strangers. Well, there's no better way to start to change that than to get rid of such items like a burqa, which is so distinctive and so divisive, and actually quite a threatening thing for British people to pass on the streets, or for children to have to come across in school, or whatever area of life it might be. I was a magistrate for 20 years, Kevin. If anybody had walked into my courts wearing such an item, proceedings would have been stopped until the item was removed.
Now, Kelly, I've had a couple of imams on and representatives of Islam on, and what they always say is, look, first of all, why are we getting our knickers in a twist? This is such a small issue because in Britain hardly any Muslim women wear the full face cover, or even the sort of semi face cover. I mean, there are the three extreme ones, or the complete, where you literally there's just a net across there and you can't see them at all. Then there's the one like that, where you can just see their eyes. And then there's that kind of rather sinister one with the sort of nose covering as well. So it's those three are the big face-covering ones, and they also are very, very few. I mean, infinitesimal number of women wear them. They're from sub-Saharan Africa and Afghanistan, so it's not really worth talking about this. Now, the last time I had an Imam on my show, he told, oh no, you never see any women with these things. I went out of this studio at the end of the show, went down into London Bridge Station, and coming up the escalator were about 8 of these women with that. And actually, ever since that guy told me that, I've been looking out, as it were, and I see every single day, 10 women with these full things. So I think they're promoting this idea. Oh, it's not worth talking about. There's so few. I don't think that's true. I think there are quite a few. So that's one way to sort of position what I feel about it, that there are a lot of women out there who wear this thing. So what is your position on the burqa, Kelly J?
Well, Kevin, about 2 weeks ago, I was at Speaker's Corner with Let Women Speak, and what we do is we go and take up space at the Speaker's Corner where there's a lot of men arguing about God, and it seems to have really changed Speaker's Corner over the years. So we decided that we wanted to ensure that women had their rightful place at actual Speaker's Corner at the last Sunday of every month. And as I was walking away, and I think I just had a conversation with a very woke young American journalist who didn't really like talking about free speech. And I turned, and there were 2 young women wearing the niqab, and the niqab is like the face covering. And I just simply said to those women, free your faces, ladies. Be free, find your liberty, whatever it was. It was free your faces. Now, that was shared and that was viewed, 24 million times in about 3 days. Yeah. And I have now received hundreds, like no exaggeration, I've published them all on my website, hundreds of stories from women throughout the Middle East, like majority Saudi Arabia, talking about how the veil is not just it's not just a face covering. It is a barrier to all sorts of things. It's a barrier to being a fully fledged human. From the age of 12, many of these women are put in this sort of fabric prison. And so banning it in this country, I think, is pretty essential if we're supposed to love integration and multiculturalism, and we want everybody to get along nicely. You can't do that if you enable some cultures to have their women hidden behind a veil. And I know from the conversations I've had since this kind of, it was a 7-second video and it went just super viral.
So you struck a chord, in other words, a massive chord.
Yeah. And the women who have to live behind this veil, they claim that those that say it's out of choice is never out of choice. And I think I've seen it more. In fact, I've had emails from people who say they see it more in this country than maybe in Kuwait. You know, there's more women behind the veil in London than there would be in some of the Middle Eastern countries, clearly not in Saudi Arabia, where all women seem to be hidden behind it, although it's not a law, but it is imposed by men in the family at threat of death.
Yeah, well, this is the other element of the argument, against the ban, and I'm sort of ostensibly slightly torn insofar as, I don't like rules and regulations, and I don't like the idea of laws that tell women or anybody what they can and cannot wear. Yeah. That said, because I've seen what you've been tweeting, the stories of so many women in the burqas, saying that they don't want to be wearing these things. So that said, the libertarian in me wants people to be allowed to wear whatever they want, not have the government get involved. However, I think that the burqa, the face cover burqa, in whatever form it is a symbol of a sign, if you like, that women are second-class citizens, have to do what men tell them. Also, this nonsensical medieval claptrap that should a man see the skin of a woman's face, he will be consumed by uncontrollable lust and attack. I mean, we can't, in this country, allow that kind of medieval nonsense to prevail. So I'm worried about that. And I think more than that. It is how many women behind these burqas actually want to be like that. So they'll always say, well, it's their choice. They do it voluntarily. Well, actually what happens to these women is around about the age of 11 or 12, their parents stick the damn things on, and that's it. So before they even fully reach puberty, they're getting their brains washed about you have to wear this. So the issue is, do we want this symbol that consigns women to sort of second-class citizenship? And do women want to wear it? Are they wearing this voluntarily? I think the answer to those two questions are yes and no.
Well, I've never been called naked so many times as I have over the last couple of weeks from men who object to me raising the issue. They'll sort of call me naked because I might have my hand showing, or my neck, or my face, or my ankles. And I think that's another thing to consider. If some women are fully covered, then it makes other women look uncovered, if you like. Maybe it makes us naked in the eyes of those men. And actually, I think if in those cultures both men and women were fully covered, I think we could argue something else, that it was freedom of expression. But actually, we have all sorts of rules about what you can and can't wear. Like, I'd like them to be a bit stricter, to be quite honest. And it really does go against some of my views about freedom of expression. But, we're not allowed to wear sort of, you can't walk down the street in a G-string, for example, because that's indecent. And I would argue that it is indecent to cover a woman as if she can't be seen because it's improper and immodest. And she therefore is inviting the sin of men. It's her fault if those men look upon her and have lustful thoughts. It's her fault for showing her face. And we just can't get into that. It's
nonsense. It's just nonsense. It's medieval claptrap, absolute nonsense. And, we have to think about whether or not, we want to be a country that sanctions that kind of thing, enshrines that, if you like. But as I say, the question is so they'll always argue, the defenders of the burqa, well, they do it voluntarily. It's their choice. Do you want laws against what people wear? As you say, there are laws against what people wear. You can't walk down the street with a T-shirt with a swastika on it, for example, as you quite rightly say. There's actually a law that says you do have to wear clothes. You can't not wear clothes. So laws about apparel are there. They're not unknown. So we could potentially make laws about this. There is, of course, also, Kelly, the argument that there are security risks, identification risks. But, the women wearing the full burqa or any of the burqas, the face-covering burqas, they're kind of extracted, aren't they, from society? They can't really get a job. They can't go and work in an office. They can't sort of, socialise normally. So I think that's a worry as well, isn't it? It sort of cuts them off. And as I say, it sort of consigns them to a sort of second-class citizenship. Why are they wearing this? Because men demand it. That doesn't stick right with me.
No. Well, it's instantly dehumanising because I think what you see is a burqa. You don't see a woman, you don't think about how old is she, you don't think about anything about her, you don't know if she's smiling at you, you don't know, you wouldn't probably interact, you wouldn't strike up a conversation if you're at a bus stop. There's not the normal things where, obviously outside of London, where people do speak to each other, you're not going to start a conversation with a woman in a burqa because she just has this barrier. So there's not the tiny little bits of communication that we sort of take for granted. Even if it's sort of screwing your nose up at something, you can't get anything from a woman in a burqa. And I've sort of made it my business since having all of these testimonies. I'm telling you, I don't think I've ever literally sort of had tears and cried at reading someone's testimony. And I read the testimony of this young woman, and she said, I don't have any memories from outside of this house because she is not allowed even to go out in the garden just in case a neighbour sees her face. And she only knows what day it is by looking at the calendar. Like,
It's right. I got a text. We had a debate last week. I got a text from a viewer, an audience member, a woman saying that she lives next door to a Muslim family, and they had a lovely little girl playing in the garden. Used to play with her kids as well, and around about the age of 11, one day coming out the front door was not a little girl. It was this burqa'd person, and she never saw that girl again. And I've been reading some of your testimonies on Twitter that you've been posting on social media, and what it reveals to me is that many women who have to wear the burqa don't want to. So that's what we have to take into account. You know, are we going to sanction a system by which women are forced to wear something they don't want to wear?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think for the very few women, for whatever reason that they choose it, we know that nothing's a free choice. Like, I'm sat here with a face full of makeup. I know.
Me too.
But I know that isn't like a truly 100% free choice, and it's all sort of the society in which I live. But that doesn't... I'm not at threat of violence or being ostracized from my family or going to hell if I don't wear makeup, or if I do wear makeup. You know, there's sort of heavy weight behind it. And the burqa there is, so it can never be a truly free choice. So I think in a democracy where we really do want people to get along, and where we actually have some value, where we say women are equal, we can't be okay with women existing behind the veil.
Yeah, and when Sarah Pochin put that question to the Prime Minister, of course, he said, oh, I'm not going to follow you down that line, terrified. And when she actually asked that question, I think it's a very valid question. I thought she did a great job. It's opening up a debate that this nation needs to have, I think, as a matter of some urgency. The House of Commons fell into this shocked, hushed silence, as if she'd committed some great taboo. So we have a bunch of representatives of the people who refuse to discuss this out of terror that they may be accused of Islamophobia. So I think that you're doing a great job. Sarah Pochin's doing a great job. Doing my best as well myself. We've got to talk about this, and we mustn't let Keir Starmer and the gang close this debate down. One last point before you go back to one of your normal topics. The members of the National Education Union, teachers, have today been told, or yesterday they were told, there is no legal definition of biological sex, and therefore you can carry on, you know, treating trans women, men who wear dresses, as if they are genuinely women. But there is a legal definition of biological sex now. The Supreme Court came up with it 3 weeks ago, didn't they?
Oh, I think they came up with... I think it was in the Equality Act from the off, and I think we all knew what it was, and you'd have to be pretty spectacularly stupid not to know that in an act where you have gender reassignment as one category, which I don't agree with, but it's in there, and you have sex in another, that sex didn't mean biological sex. Like, you'd have to need to sort of go back to primary school yourself if you didn't understand that that's what it meant. And I think teachers and teaching colleges or universities now, although they probably shouldn't be universities, because it does feel that they're really quite incoherent, not very well educated. And the union was, back in 2016, a man called David Hayton. He wrote the school's guidance that put men in women's spaces and forced children to call a man like himself she. And they've been captured for a really long time. And I don't know what the answer is. I mean, we can't sack them all because we can't even get enough teachers as it is. But maybe we start sanctioning schools that don't adhere to the law and don't look after the interests of all children in the school, which is telling them the truth and ensuring that activist teachers learn that their job is to teach not to be activists.
Yeah, not to brainwash. You're absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. Kelly J, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. Kelly J Keane there, women's rights campaigner. The burqa debate. What do you reckon? 0344 499 1000. When we come back, we're going to talk to the former editor of the Jewish Chronicle, now author, columnist Jake Wallace-Simons, about this bizarre, in my view, sanctioning of 2 Israeli ministers by Britain, by this state. So we'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Really interesting. He said the biggest success of the British state over the last few years has been education standards.
The public finances. We know that. We know that she made a forecast in March about where borrowing was. Literally just a month later, she was already £14 billion behind. And then she made the disastrous decision last year about winter fuel payments. Now she's reversed it. That doesn't look good. And she's not worked out how she's going to pay for it. While she's saying all this good news about how she's spending money here and spending money there, families will be wondering, well, what is this going to mean for me later in the year? Is she going to come back and ask me for more taxes?
They lie and they lie and they lie. This is unprecedented, the amount of lying this government's doing.
Yes, so you could, in fairness, Kev, you could argue that the Conservative government set a bit of a precedent for the...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In a little while, we're going to be talking about David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary's baffling decision to hand control of our British border to the British territory of Gibraltar to the EU. I can't work that out, apart from the fact that I think he wants to probably diminish British power, British influence around the world. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But Lammy's on a roll. His even more baffling was his decision to get Britain to sanction 2 Israeli ministers, Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, for alleged repeated incitements of violence against Palestinian communities. Now, they're hardliners, these 2 guys. They are keen on stopping aid to Gaza. By the way, there are multiple reasons to do that. And they want to resettle Palestinians outside of the Gaza Strip. So they're hardline, but they're elected members of the Israeli government. Britain has joined other virtue-signalling countries, Australia, Canada, New Zealand and Norway, in sanctioning these 2 guys. They're now banned from entering Britain. I'm not sure if they had any plans to come here anyway. And their assets, should they have any in Britain, are frozen. So it's very performative. virtue halo polishing sort of thing. But what does it achieve? What is the point of this? Let's ask former Jewish Chronicle editor, now columnist at The Telegraph, The Mail, you name it, he's in it, Jake Wallace-Simons. Hi, Jake.
Hello, good evening.
What does he think he's playing at, or what do Britain think they're playing at with this? You know, we're all particularly used to Labour politicians in particular, as I say, polishing their halos, and, oh, poor Palestinians, or, you know, Israel bad, Palestinians good. That's the Labour line, basically. But, you know, in a pragmatic, realistic world, this was a ridiculous thing to do. All we've done is alienate and infuriate our ally Israel and also America. America's seething about this. What do you think is behind Lammy doing this?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I mean, you know, Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, look, let's be frank, they're morons. You know, they've done more damage to Israel's image overseas than any two other people around living at the moment by their ridiculous extremist comments. But look, they don't make decisions about the war. They don't have power over Israel's war effort. They're morons. But look, if you're going to sanction morons amongst our allies, there's a lot of morons in the Middle East. Let's face it. You know, for example,
it's a global problem, Jake.
It's a global problem, but particularly in the Middle East. I mean, look, you know, the leader of Turkey, President Erdogan, he's turned it into an Islamist thugocracy or theocracy. He harbours Hamas, and he said about Israelis that they are only satisfied by sucking children's blood. Okay, he's a NATO ally. Do we sanction him? No, we don't. Tunisia's president, Kais Saied. You know, he's not a massive ally of ours, but we have bilateral trade of more than 750 million. There's a Tunisian delegation at London Tech Week at the moment. He has explicitly renounced the two-state solution, instead calling for all the land of Palestine for the Arabs. And he's described the Abraham Accords, the peace deal that Israel has with Arab countries, as high treason. Do we sanction him? No, we don't. Do I need to mention Qatar, by the way? That petro state, the slave state, the global capital of slavery at the moment. We enjoy 5.6 billion of trade last year. It owns 100 billion pounds of our assets in Britain, and it incites, it's the main funder of Hamas and incites against Israel through Al Jazeera all the time. We don't sanction them either. To me, this feels like an extension of the Lucy Connolly effect. You know, Lucy Connolly, of course, received 31 months in prison. Totally disproportionate. Of course, her tweet was nasty, while, you know, rapists, terrorist fundraisers and other assorted nasties have had far lighter sentences. It's this sort of offence at what people say, on only on what, you know, we don't take offence at what the Islamists say, only on what our own side says, applied to foreign policy. That, I think, is kind of what Labour is doing at the moment.
Absolutely. Now, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio urged the UK and the other nations not to forget who the real enemy is. A rather good point, I would have thought. He added, these sanctions do not advance US-led efforts to achieve a ceasefire, bring all the hostages home and end the war. Meanwhile, Israel furiously responded, it is outrageous that elected representatives and members of the government are subjected to these kind of measures. Before we go on, Jake, let's have a look at Lammy in action on this issue.
These two individuals, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, have been inciting violence against Palestinian people for months and months and months. They have been encouraging egregious abuses of human rights.
Well, there you are. That was him on ITV News. Again, you know, America and indeed Israel making it very clear that the only thing these sanctions have achieved is potentially to hamper the negotiations towards a potential ceasefire. So again, you know, I'm sure that Mr. Ben-Gvir and Mr. Smotrich had a few plans to come to Britain. I bet the farm on the fact they haven't got any assets here, and yet we froze their assets and banned them from Britain, which is purely performative. Why? Why?
Yeah, I mean, I think the worst thing about Lami's idiotic sanctioning of those two morons, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, is that the war is almost won. Hamas they've lost all their leadership. They're almost destroyed. They're being pressured, according to various sources, to come close to a deal. They might be on the brink of giving up the hostages and admitting defeat, which is what would end the war. And yet they look overseas and they see Britain sanctioning Israel rather than Hamas. Rather than calling on Hamas to surrender, it's taking out its wrath on Israel. The Prime Minister called Israel appalling just last week, not the jihadis, but Israel, and moving towards unilaterally recognising a state of Palestine. Hamas negotiators see that and think, you know what, let's carry on the war because Israel might be pressured to stop without us having to give up our hostages and without us having to go into exile and admit defeat and surrender. So actually, Lami's foreign policy is extending this war, it's emboldening Hamas, and it's causing the deaths of more Palestinians and more Israeli troops. That is what British foreign policy is doing at the moment. He should hang his head in shame. It's creating the opposite result from the one that he claims to want. All this virtue signalling is actually causing death in real life.
And what do you think is behind that? Do you think this is Labour putting its old clothes on again, its Corbyn-style clothes? Do you think in Labour's DNA is an inherent dislike of Israel? Because I kind of think that is the case.
Look, it could very well be the case, but certainly what we can see is that Labour is under huge electoral pressure from its Muslim base, who are turning in their droves to these Gaza independents and taking out their anger against Labour for the paltry amount of support it has managed to muster for Israel. And Labour has gradually been shifting its position step by step away from support for Israel and towards hostility towards Israel. It's not been an instant U-turn, it's been a step-by-step slow burn of a U-turn. It started with suspending those arms licenses, those 30 arms licenses last year. It's gone through various other steps, voting against Israel at the UN. We had Britain suspending those trade discussions a couple of weeks ago and coming out calling Israel appalling last week. Now we've got sanctioning. We're leading up towards the recognition of a Palestinian state. All of this is going to slowly be influencing, or so Labour hopes, influencing Muslim voters to think, you know what, maybe I'll go back and start voting Labour again rather than hemorrhaging support to the independents. I think it's domestic politics, it's desperation from Starmer, and meanwhile he's selling all of his morality and Britain's foreign policy down the river.
Yeah, well, because straight after October the 7th, when Starmer, to his credit, came right out in support of Israel, but you could tell then that the Labour government, while supporting Israel, was not that comfortable in that position. Now they're in a position where they're condemning it. It's like they're on their home territory. They're much more comfortable about this. Lamy, enthusiastic in his condemnation. This is what worries me. I can't let you go, Jake, without a few words on our friend, the Doom Goblin, Greta Thunberg. The funniest thing I thought about this Freedom Flotilla was that although the cargo they had on board, the aid, to be fair, was performative, symbolic, but apparently they'd eaten most of it. so the actual Greta and her 11 friends had eaten most of the food anyway. But when they got there, there were two things that you could argue. Look, we're helping Greta win here by talking about her, but she thinks, oh well, I've raised awareness about the issue. We're fully aware of the issue, Greta. We don't need you to do this. We know it's all about you. We know, as the Israelis quite brilliantly described your boat, it was nothing more than a selfie yacht. It's all about you. We know that. But the fact that we're talking about you, Greta, isn't a victory for you, because we're talking about you in contemptuous terms, the utmost contemptuous terms. And there are two things that I think deserve serious contempt. One is her disgusting use of the word kidnap. The Israelis have kidnapped us. Actually, what the Israeli Navy was doing was saving their damn lives, because if they got anywhere near Gaza, they would not have survived. The Israeli Navy then very nicely took them into a nice, peaceful Israeli port. And the next disgusting move by this Scandinavian weirdo woman was this, in my view, refusing to watch the 43-minute film of what happened on October the 7th, what Hamas did. Why do you think she refused to watch it?
Well, because she's closing her eyes to reality, because reality doesn't conform to her view of the world. It's as simple as that. But you're right. I mean, Israel did save her life. You know, in 2008, an Italian activist made his way to Gaza, ended up being kidnapped and strangled with a plastic cord by some Salafists over there. So, you know, the same fate may very well have ended up being hers. But look, two things I would say. The first thing is this, you know, her use of the word kidnapped is, of course, the most repellent and offensive and disgusting thing that she's done in her short but repellent career. But, you know, this is the only kidnap that I've ever seen where the kidnappers are more keen to get rid of her than they were to get her in the first place. She was out of the country within 24 hours. So, you know, not much of a kidnap. But the other thing I would say, I don't know if you've seen the footage recently, it was just around over the last few hours, her walking through the airport flanked by police officers, her hands by her sides in normal fashion. As soon as she catches sight of the media cameras, she puts her hands behind her back as if she's been handcuffed. I mean, it's absolutely hysterical. It's just performance after performance. It's not about the Palestinians. It's not about the Israelis. It's about Greta Thunberg. So much is clear by the way that she culturally appropriates the Palestinian scarf, the keffiyeh, and puts it on when she wouldn't culturally appropriate a sombrero. You know, she is hugely offensive and just really just deserves to be condemned and criticised and mocked.
Well, if she'd have spent more of her youth at school, then she'd be more educated and perhaps not quite so stupid. But she unfortunately spent her entire youth sitting outside the Swedish government protesting about climate change. And of course she's moved on to Palestine after the disappointment of her prediction that humanity would be destroyed by climate change in 2023. So she's had to go to pastures new. You've got to give her that. It is pathetic, but I think it's worth stressing that I don't think she has achieved anything at all, and this was above her pay grade. She must be persuaded never to do anything like this again.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, though, on a serious note, she's a hero to many, many young people. You know, when she put out that video calling for support to free her from the kidnapping that she apparently had suffered at the hand of the Israelis, that caused demonstrations in Stockholm outside the government buildings. And not only that, but the Swedish hotline for Swedes abroad who were in trouble was jammed by thousands of callers demanding that they act to free Greta Thunberg, meaning that actual Swedes overseas who needed help weren't able to get through. This is the effect that she has. She has a huge fan base, so she's very easy for you and I to mock because we can see through her and she's, you know, idiotic and cretinous. But a lot of people are taken in by this stuff, and she speaks for many, many hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions of activists who are all leading our country into a very difficult place indeed.
You're right. She should be taken seriously because she is dangerous. You're absolutely right. Jake, fantastic to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. That's Jake Wallace-Simons, former editor of the Jewish Chronicle, now writes, well, he's an author as well, and he has written a book called Israelophobia, the newest version of The Oldest Hatred and What to Do About It. And he's a prolific columnist, writes for The Telegraph. Had a good piece in the Mail about the doom goblin Greta this week. So I highly recommend his writings. Now, next up, we're going to take some calls, which is 5 minutes before we move on to our next topic. So get on the phone, 0344 499 1000. Let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now let's talk about Gibraltar. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but the government is saying that the reason David Lammy, him again, has decided to hand control of the border between Gibraltar and Spain to the EU. It's our border. It's our territory, obviously, Gibraltar, our border. The government's saying, well, we've handed it. The EU will handle that border from now on, control that border, because it makes it easier for British citizens to get in. You know, hitherto they've had to queue up for, allegedly ages to get through passport and customs control. Now they can join all the EU people and go straight through. Well, I'm not buying that. I mean, why suddenly are we going to do that? And why did we find out about it today, on the day of the spending review? This was a good day to bury bad news. We'll talk about that in just a second. But let's go to the phones and let's talk to Michael in Birmingham. Hello, Michael. You want to talk about vagrancy?
Yeah, well, I'm actually in the pub at the moment, so sorry if it's a bit noisy.
Cheers. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a bit of it's a Bud Light with lime, which I was going
to sound really jealous of you, but now you've told me what you're drinking, I'm not. Anyway, enjoy your Bud Light with lime. What would you like to say, Michael?
Yeah, I just want to say all this kind of like relaxation in laws is part of like this rich kid lefty agenda just to cause breakdown and chaos, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. That's exactly what I was saying, Michael. That my view of this, you know, it's another one of these announcements that Labour makes that you think, why are they doing this? What's the point? So she's announcing she's decriminalising homelessness, as if before this the cops just went round arresting every homeless person they could see, which of course they didn't. But the effect of this will be that the police will no longer be able to arrest or move on homeless people in tent cities, wherever they are. That will be the effect. And that, as you say, will cause chaos. And that's what's happened in America. I think Angela Rayner's looked across the Atlantic and said, oh, look at all those vagrants, all those hobos causing hell for rich people in nice houses in Los Angeles, multi-million-dollar houses. That's a good attack on wealth and privilege. I'll have a bit of that. That's why I think she's doing this.
Yeah, but also, Kevin, I think, you know, we talk about America. You look at these riots over in Los Angeles and wherever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some people, there might be some people from migrant backgrounds and whatever. But most of the time when they catch these little Antifa thugs and whatever, they're always rich kids, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're always Sebastian and Jasons and Tarquins and whatever, playing at being the tough guy, which Antifa, I just laugh in their face whenever I see them. They wouldn't last 5 minutes in this pub in Brum, put it that way.
I'm surprised you're lasting with your Bud Light and lime.
Well, I ordered it on an app, so they didn't know it was from there. But what they've covered in America, Kevin, it's all this is related is the left wing are organised at bringing things down, and the Americans are finding out, as I suspect, that a lot of government-funded NGOs are helping these rioters and paying for them. And I will tell you now, this is a controversial thing. I don't think people smugglers exist. I don't think they are. I think that they're British people from NGOs doing it.
Well, you know, I mean, they're certainly elusive. We don't seem to have caught any at all. So it's an interesting theory, that, Michael. I take that on board. I suspect there are people smugglers. They're just damn good at their job, and they're far too clever for the idiot Brits of the Border Security Command to get anywhere near finding. So that's what I think's going on. But that's an interesting theory. But you're right about this. Is what worries me about this government, essentially. They pronounce so many new rules, regulations, and diktats, and you think, what's the point of this? And the only point you can think of is they're trying to be destructive. They're trying to have a go. It's class warfare. They're trying to have a go at people who've got property, who've got cars, who've done well in life. They're trying to take their money, make their life miserable and give it to people, you know, who are on the dole, basically. That's what so I think my fear is with this government, and I think this is what you're getting at, that they are ideologically at war with anyone who's not on the dole and jobless, if you see what I mean.
I do, but I know one thing, Kevin, that they will be ideologically at war with the capitalist system, except for their property and shares portfolio and inherited wealth.
Yeah.
They keep very quiet about that.
Oh, yeah, no, apart from themselves, of course. You know, you get, for example, that great socialist against privilege, against the trappings of privilege, the trappings of a class system, Sadiq Khan. Would you like a knighthood? Oh, yes, please. Yes, please. Can I be Sir Sadiq Khan? No, you can't on this show, but I've unknighted him on this show. He's Mr. Sadiq Khan, and we will never call him Sir. So there you go. Michael, enjoy your drink. Get a better drink next time, though, and call me again. Thanks a lot. Michael in Birmingham, drinking Bud Light and lime. What is that? Right, let's go to break. When we come back, we'll talk about Gibraltar. Stay tuned.
I think those UK sanctions on the two Israeli ministers are really a grave strategic and moral error. And I think that's because it's not principled at all. It's some sort of partisan posturing, which is driven clearly by Labour's domestic politics, not by Britain's national interests. And I think that it's a dangerous double standard. It's not what they do to other countries. It emboldens terrorists and it undermines our allies. Israel is meant to be a strong ally of the UK at its moment of need during this existential war that it's fighting and doing quite well in, one must say. Britain is trying to throw it under the bus.
Across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
After the news, in about 10 minutes' time, we're going to be trying to work out what the hell is going on in Los Angeles. Obviously, riot-torn Los Angeles. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, almost crying, accusing Donald Trump of launching an assault on democracy. Is he? Or is he just trying to honour his electoral pledge to deport illegal migrants? That's what he was trying to do in LA. So the city has erupted. He sent in the troops. Newsom and the awful mayor of LA, Karen Bass, worse than useless, they say we didn't need the troops, and that Trump is deliberately inflaming the situation to make them look bad. You don't really need any help, Karen and Gavin, to look bad. Yeah, honestly, you're very good at it on your own. Anyway, we'll talk about that after the 9 o'clock news. But first, let's talk about Gibraltar and what's going on there. Today, David Lammy, on behalf of this country, handed control of the border between our British territory, Gibraltar, and Spain, in other words, the EU, to the EU. So Brussels now controls that border. Why has he done this? Let's talk to a spokesperson for Friends of the British Overseas Territories, Robert Midgley. Robert, hi. The government says that it's inherited a difficult situation that put Gibraltar's economy and way of life under threat, and this is a great breakthrough that delivers a practical solution. I mean, I don't really understand what he's talking about. Why, in your view, can you work out why we've handed control of this important border of British territory to Brussels?
Well, to start with, Kevin, thanks for having me on. This announcement is quite vague. There's not much detail in it. We'll see the full details when the treaty is presented, and I think the devil will be in the detail there. What I will say, there are good factors to this and bad factors to this, I think. This is a good thing because it's been going on since Brexit. They came out at the same time we did, therefore we had to negotiate on behalf of them. So we've been working with them for a few years now and getting this over the line. There's been a lot holding it back. But also, if you've ever tried to get into Gibraltar by land, you would be stuck in queues for hours. 15,000 people cross that border every single day, and Spain play tricks in holding up queues. They don't like the fact that Gibraltar is British, and there's been a real congestion of flow with people going across the border. So what they've announced, and this is the only physical thing that I've been able to point out here, is that they're not removing the border completely. They've moved the physical border, well, the physical border is staying there, but they're moving the checkpoint into the airport. From what I understand, that would be like a St. Pancras-style checkpoint that will have Spanish or EU staff controlling it, and then British staff controlling it. Now, there's a few issues with that. Yes, it's good that they've come up with a solution, but also when you access the EU in a few months' time, you'll be paying for a visa. You'll be doing the 90-day limit. We've not had that with Gibraltar before, so it seems quite strange that now we would have to then pay for a visa that would be a 90-day visit to access our own overseas territory. So that needs to be explained a bit more, because this hasn't been explained at all. That this is going to be quite a big issue. Also, locals have already voiced concerns, because without that border, it raises concerns about customs. What happens with the amount of smuggling that goes across? I don't know if you know this, but Gibraltar has its own tax regime on alcohol and cigarettes, and there's a bit of smuggling that goes on. And locals have already voiced concern there about smuggling across the border. Who's going to be there to stop this? Who's monitoring this? The current border will still be in place, but not operable. But they said that they will still have some police on that border, but people are voicing concern.
So what we've done here is, because the Spanish have been playing dirty tricks and making the border difficult to get through, because they don't like the fact that Gibraltar is British, we've kind of capitulated to that and just said, all right, then the EU can control this border. Perhaps we should have told the Spanish, well, you can carry on playing your dirty tricks, we're not going to play this game.
Well, the thing is that that southern tip of Spain, like I said, 15,000 people depend on the Gibraltar economy. That's people working in hotels, restaurants, Gibraltarians who can't afford to live in Gibraltar, live there, family, neighbours, friends. They're all coming across. So a no deal or closing that border would harm Gibraltar's economy and that whole southern tip.
When you say no deal, no, I mean, I get... I mean, why do we need a deal? I mean, you know, hasn't the border always been like this ever since Brexit
true,
or before? Why do we suddenly need a deal?
Well, why did we need a Brexit deal?
Well, we voted for that, didn't we? So
yeah. And they came out with us as well, with our other overseas territories. So there's been good factors and bad factors. But like I said, the devil will be in the detail once the treaty is released, and we'll be able to see if we're now having to pay for visa access into our own overseas territory.
But we could have just left it as it is, and then the British would have kept control of our sovereign border there.
No, I completely agree with that. But Spain would have made their lives a complete misery.
I think we should have said to Spain, carry on. We're not giving the EU or anyone else control of our sovereign border. I don't see why we should capitulate and bow to their bully boy tactics.
No, and they have been bullying us, since the border opened. They enter Gibraltarian territorial waters every single day, unauthorised access, and the Guardia Civil constantly come up against the Royal Navy there and the local police. This isn't a new issue. This is, we're trying to ease tensions. Yes, I don't particularly believe in soft power diplomacy myself, but, a deal had to be done. There has to be some compromise somewhere. Just to get them off our backs.
Oh, maybe. I'm not. I mean, I know you're not here as a representative of the EU or Gibraltar or whatever, but I'm not necessarily buying the fact that a deal had to be done. We could have stood firm.
That we're yet to find out if this costs anything. We've seen with the Czech Islands issue that it's going to go into £30 billion. How much is this deal being costed? So we're yet to see these details, and I'm sure they'll come out in the next few weeks.
What's your feeling? I mean, we were trying to get hold of anybody from Gibraltar today, but couldn't seem to do so. What's your feeling about the people in Gibraltar? I mean, how are they sort of feeling about this new deal?
They're concerned about security, first and foremost. They're worried about criminal gangs coming across. They're worried about the smuggling. They're worried about crime rates increasing in Gibraltar. That's their general feeling. That's their number one priority.
Interesting. So they've got a lot of concerns. But as you were saying at the start of this conversation, we're going to have to wait and find out what the details are. As I say, my basic point is, and I'm only approaching this from a very outsider, amateurish kind of viewpoint, but my basic feeling is, this is a British territory. The British control that border, and I don't understand why we would be interested in giving control of that border to anyone else.
Well, like I said, it's going to be a joint effort now. Yes, I don't agree with it. We don't like the idea of EU or Spanish, border people being inside our airport, but we have done that with London St Pancras. We do have French and British, and
it's kind of different. But I take your point. Listen, Robert, it's good to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time. Robert Midgley, there, spokesperson for the Friends of the British Overseas Territories. What do you think about that? I mean, as I say, why? I mean, OK, it's a difficult border, but it's ours. So let me go, well, it's all causing so many problems. Let's give it to the EU. Why? Next up, those riots in LA. We'll be debating that. Stick around.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is hour 3 of a very busy edition of tonight's Political Asylum. In about 20-25 minutes, I'll be handing the show over to you. It's your show from then until 10 p.m. Get on the phone and call me about any of the issues we've been discussing. 0344 499 1000. The main issue, I think, is the government handing 280 million more pounds to the useless Border Security Command in their failure to catch any people smuggling gangs. You know, why are we giving them more money? They've failed completely so far. And this asylum seeker hotel pledge, we will get all asylum seekers out of hotels. I think there's about 40,000 asylum seekers in more than 200 hotels around the country. So that's going to be quite a mammoth task, which is probably why Rachel Reeves said it'll take until the end of this Parliament, another 4 years. Not a particularly dramatic timescale if you think about it. But if they get all these asylum seekers out of hotels, where are they going to put them? That's the big question. I'll tell you where they're going to put them: social housing, council houses. And that will mean that they go to the top of the queue, the top of the line, and below that will be British citizens who've probably been waiting for years. So that's what's coming up, if you ask me. Let me know what you think about all that. 0344 499 1000. Also, we've given away the border of the British territory of Gibraltar to the EU. We controlled the border, now the EU control the border. Why? 0344 499 1000. Now, before we get to you guys, let's talk about Los Angeles. Let's talk about America, what's been going on over there. Of course, I don't know what the situation is today. It won't be night yet in LA, but most nights, you know, LA has burned. There have been riots going on since last Friday. This was after ICE, the immigration unit, moved in to areas of downtown LA, the city bit, to raid various businesses with a view to catching people who are illegal migrants and shouldn't be working, and then deporting them. This, of course, has ignited these protests. Protests that are spreading, it seems, possibly to New York, possibly to San Francisco, Atlanta. Now, Donald Trump has responded to the unrest in Los Angeles by sending in the National Guard, 4,000 of them. Just to put that in context, that's like the reserves here, the Territorial Army. They're not professional soldiers, so they've been called in. And he's now talking about sending in 700 Marines as well. Now, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, and the Democrat mayor, Karen Bass, they say we never needed these troops. We had this under control, and that President Trump has sent in the soldiers, if you like, in order to deliberately inflame the situation, make this Democrat city look bad, and to threaten other cities with the same kind of action, which he has. He says, I may do this to other cities as well. Well, look, we're going to have a debate. I'm going to introduce the guests in just a minute, but just to set the scene, here is the governor of California talking about what he calls Donald Trump's assault on democracy, and getting quite teary-eyed about it. So take it away, Gavin.
California is no stranger to immigration enforcement, but instead of focusing on undocumented immigrants with serious criminal records and people with final deportation orders, a strategy both parties have long supported, this administration is pushing mass deportations, indiscriminately targeting hardworking immigrant families, regardless of their roots or risk. What's happening right now is very different than anything we've seen before. On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. In other actions, a U.S. citizen, 9 months pregnant, was arrested. A 4-year-old girl taken, families separated, friends quite literally disappearing.
He also went on to talk about what he said was a kind of coordinated assault on democracy by the president, that Donald Trump was attacking Democrat cities with a view to a kind of tyranny from Washington. Now here's Donald Trump responding to all of this. This is what he has said about the protests arising from these ICE raids.
The agitators are throwing firebombs, Molotov cocktails, lighting vehicles ablaze. You saw the cars that were burning, mobbing police officers and ICE officers who are the toughest people you'll ever meet, and they love our country, and they're getting really they want to stomp on them, but they're too tough. They don't allow it. And attempting to infiltrate and occupy federal buildings wearing armor and face shields. The best money can buy, somebody's financing it. We're going to find out through Pam Bondi and Department of Justice who it is. They're already on it. Who's financing all this equipment? Very professional. Under the Trump administration, this anarchy will not stand. We will not allow federal agents to be attacked, and we will not allow an American city to be invaded and conquered by a foreign enemy, and that's what they are.
So there's Donald Trump. He says he's not assaulting democracy. He's trying to keep these cities safe, and he's trying to come good on his electoral pledge to deport illegal migrants by sending in the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, known as ICE. To debate this issue, this burning issue, if I can put it that way, in the studio, Greg Swenson from the Republicans Overseas Organisation here in London, and from the Democrats abroad, John Scardino. Welcome, John.
Thank you for having me.
And welcome, Greg.
Yeah. Good to see you, John.
So, John, first, can I come to you first? What do you say to Gavin Newsom's accusation that Donald Trump is launching an assault on democracy? And what do you think about Donald Trump's response, essentially, that he was democratically elected to deport illegal migrants, and that's what he's trying to do in Los Angeles?
Look, I think Trump was looking for an excuse to send in troops like this and to show an unnecessary show of force. I think it's a demonstration of incompetence in leadership. He did have a conversation with the Governor Newsom about the situation in LA. They talked a bit about a number of things going on in California, but in no point in that conversation did he talk about sending in the National Guard, which is quite an extension to, at the least, of his power as president, because it technically, as you know, and I think as you've covered before, that the National Guard is under the authority of the governor and of governors in other states. It's not a force that is typically used by the president. But after this phone call, without mentioning sending in the National Guard, Trump went ahead and did it in a way that was an uncoordinated, not well thought out, and after the fact, Governor Newsom asked him to rescind the order, that it would just be putting fuel on the fire of what was going on down there, that the local law enforcement and additional support from the rest of the state of California was more than adequate to handle the situation. As you know, California is the biggest state in the union, and they have, if it were a separate country, it would be something like the fifth largest economy in the world. So they've definitely got the resources to manage situations like this, and they were relying not only on local law enforcement, but it had sent in 175 specially trained California Highway Patrol troops to come in and reinforce local law enforcement.
Do you think, John, then, that President Trump, Donald Trump, sent in the National Guards? He's also threatening to send in Marines. Do you think he deliberately did that to inflame the situation, make it look bad, and make a Democrat city look bad?
Oh, absolutely. This is all political theater as far as Donald Trump is concerned. And the troops that he's sending in, the Marines, for example, which is now taking this another step further to make it more dramatic and put more fuel on the fire. Those troops are, they're Marines. They're not trained in this kind of situation. In fact, I was watching video just this afternoon showing from a drone's point of view the Marines taking training on the spot just this afternoon. So they're sending in troops that aren't equipped, aren't trained, don't have the mentality for this kind of local law enforcement activity, and I think it's going to lead to a bad situation, I'm afraid to say. But it's an enormous overstep of presidential authority. And it's something that he was just itching for a fight like this with the Democratic governor.
Okay,
so it's no surprise.
okay, John. Well, let's bring in Greg Swenson. By the way, pop fact: last time they sent the National Guard into Los Angeles amid riots, I was there. I was covering it. It was the Rodney King riots in 1992. So there's something quite nostalgic about all this for me. But seriously, Greg, your view on what's going on. So supporters of Trump would argue that what he's trying to do is to come good on his electoral pledge to deport illegal migrants. Now, I know more than most that many people, Los Angeles is illegal migrant city. In fact, if they get rid of all the illegal migrants from Los Angeles, everybody's backyards will go to hell.
Who's going to cut Gavin Newsom's lawn?
Exactly right. But seriously, your view on what's going on. I mean, John says that the president is doing this deliberately to inflame the situation and make a Democrat city and a Democrat state look bad. Where do you stand on this?
Well, just about everybody on the left in the Democratic media complex is arguing that, and it's absurd because with as you said, President Trump is delivering on his campaign promises. And let's remember, I mean, Gavin Newsom talked about democracy, teary Gavin Newsom. Look, Congress makes the laws. That's in democracy. They legislate the laws, and then the executive branch enforces the law. Obama did it quite well. I've seen a lot of his former Justice Department official, Cecilia Munoz, talking a lot about it, old clips from 2011 and 12 saying, we are going to enforce the law. If you don't like the law, go to Congress and have it changed. So this is black and white. This is political malpractice by Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles. That's President Trump's job, and he's doing it. So he sends in ICE, and then Mayor Bass and Gavin Newsom say to their police departments, don't cooperate with ICE, which is against the law. If you catch someone stealing, or someone has a speeding ticket, they're obligated to report illegal migrants to ICE. Now, they refuse to do that in these so-called sanctuary cities. So basically what the left is saying, what the Democrats are saying is, don't enforce the law, don't enforce immigration law, and if you do, we're going to burn your city down. That's just not sensible.
John, respond, if you will.
I think that's a bit of an over-dramatization, Greg, of the situation. I wouldn't say that they are not cooperating with the ICE agents. The ICE has a job to do, and I certainly wouldn't want to get in the way of them. They are for my own personal safety. But I think what is a concern, and you will have heard the mayor of Los Angeles and the governor both say the way that we oppose this is through peaceful demonstration, through peaceful protest. If you are here to damage property and to engage in looting, then you will be dealt with. Don't come out expecting that this is a party of some sort. You're going to be harshly dealt with if you're after damaging property or stealing goods or anything like that. So I think they've been quite clear about their intentions. The governor and the state of California have worked with the National Guard before in similar circumstances. In fact, they've worked in coordination with the National Guard on the southern border to interdict illegal supplies of fentanyl that have been coming over the border. So they've been, there is a history there of cooperation. It's just in this particular case, as I say, Trump was, itching for a fight, and in light of having a very bad week last week. The jobs numbers were not very good. The economy is not doing well. The forecasts for a recession coming later in the year as a result of tariffs and this budget deal that he's trying to shove down everybody's throat. You know, he's not having a very good time, and his poll numbers are down.
That notwithstanding, though, John, all those points taken, but that notwithstanding, Greg's point that you know, he's got this electoral pledge. He said, I'm going to deport illegal migrants. Now, around the states, if you want to go to the place where you're going to find the most illegal migrants, it will be in Los Angeles. So surely he has every right to send ICE in. And you're playing this down. But Greg is right. Newsom and Karen Bass told the police, told the local law enforcers not to cooperate with ICE. And there's this undercurrent of Newsom and Karen Bass supporting the protesters. So, I mean, you know, what exactly is it that you feel that Donald Trump is doing wrong here, insofar as he's just honouring what he said he was going to do in the election campaign?
There's a huge number of immigrants all across the country. In Georgia, where I'm from, obviously in Texas, but in Chicago, you know, hundreds of miles.
Well, he's going to go into these cities as well. He said so, and he's talking about.
But, you know, and Republican and Democratic states.
Well, what's wrong with that?
There are immigrants all over the place.
But there's nothing wrong with that.
There is a way of doing it and a way of dealing with crisis that I think he's inept and incompetent in doing. He has a really misguided idea of what the military and the armed forces are there to do. And I think he completely is misjudged this. He's going to do this again in just a couple of days, using the excuse of the Army's 250th anniversary to throw a great big military-style birthday party parade for himself, the first time in decades that there's ever been a military parade in Washington, D.C. Look, we Democrats are very supportive of the military services and the service that men and women have given.
Are you supportive of the policy to deport illegal migrants?
Yes, Democrats worked with Republicans before the election. There was a bill that we were working on together that was a Republican-led initiative supported by Democrats that was working its way through the Senate. And Joe Biden and others have introduced a number of immigration reforms that didn't make it anywhere because the Republicans like to campaign on this issue. And this was exactly the case at the beginning of last year, and before Trump was elected. He said, kill the Senate bill. And I know that it would go through. It was looking like it was going to go through. And before it got to a vote, he said to the Republicans in the Senate, don't bring this bill for a vote because it'll go through, and I want immigration to campaign on.
Okay, John, let's let Greg have a word now. Look, Donald Trump, I believe, has empowered himself to do what he's done in LA, in every state, all 50 states. So he can now, if he chooses, if there's trouble, he can send in the National Guard and indeed the Marines to every single state. And he's talking about New York in particular. He's talking about San Francisco. He's talking about Atlanta. He's talking about Democrat cities.
Right. It won't be 50 states. It'll be a handful.
So what about, respond to what John is saying, that he's doing this purely performatively, purely to shroud other problems that he's got.
Well, I agree with the
performative,
because President Trump is performative. He's great at it, right? That's why one of the reasons he was elected. But he's on the moral high ground here. And I think what you'll hear from Democrats a lot, I'm sorry I couldn't hear John with the audio, but you know, one is that they'll say he started it, okay? And that's obscene and that's absurd. He's following the law, just like Obama did, like Biden did not, but Trump is not Biden, quite obviously. But Obama followed it, Bush followed it, and now you have Trump following it. The second thing they'll say is it was mostly peaceful. That's hysterical. Like in 2020 when St. John's Church was burning behind the CNN guy who said that. You know,
they're saying that, aren't they?
If it's so peaceful, why did Mayor Bass enforce a curfew last night? you know, you see burning
By the way,
cars.
they keep saying that, mostly peaceful demonstrations. Though that kind of statement is the enemy of journalism. You know, you can't say mostly peaceful. That's like saying, there was a horrific train crash. 50 people died, but most of the passengers didn't.
Yeah,
it's nonsense. It's
corrupt.
Absolute nonsense.
So you got burning cars in the background. You got stores being looted, the Apple shop or whatever. And then they also like to say no president has ever federalized troops without the cooperation of the governor. Like when in '92, when George H.W. sent the Army, the Marines, and the National Guard, he had the cooperation of the governor. However, look at Eisenhower in '57, look at JFK. Eisenhower sent federal troops to Arkansas because the Democratic governor of Arkansas would not desegregate the schools. The Congress of the United States said, you must desegregate. And the governor said, we're not going to follow that law because we don't like it. We don't like our black children going to school with white children. So JFK and Eisenhower both federalized Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas. So there's plenty of history.
He does have the right to federalize this issue.
Absolutely he does. And he should, because first of all, he's protecting the ICE agents who are under threat. And secondly, now
and just doing their job.
Yes, and now he's so they were under threat. Now he's got to protect the poor people that live in that neighborhood in LA, who are the ones who suffer the most. If you burnt a car in Beverly Hills, Kevin, you know LA, you lived there 10 years. If you burnt a car in Beverly Hills, you're going to jail, right? If you loot a store in Beverly Hills, this is a governor who's decriminalized crime. That's why Walgreens and CVS are basically moving out of the state, or at least San Francisco. And last weekend, a biological male just cleaned up the gold medals at the high school track state championships. I mean, these people have lost their minds there. So this is what we're dealing with.
Listen, John, I'm going to give you the last word here because this is what the charge is. Greg is making this charge, and a lot of Republicans and right-wingers, non-Democrats, say the same. And there seems to be evidence for it. That Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass are a disastrous double act. They were disastrous during the LA fires, and they look to be pretty disastrous now. Now, with all due respect to Democrats, you could have better people in these positions right now, couldn't you?
Look, I
think he's going to say yes.
I was going to say that, look, maybe Greg couldn't hear because of the audio or some of the things that I've said, but a number of the things that he has claimed that people on the left would be saying, I haven't said. I'm in favor of an appropriate management of the immigration issue that we've got. And my point is that I think Donald Trump is exacerbating this situation for his own political benefit. There is a way to deal with it. As I've said, the National Guard has been used effectively and in cooperation with this government, with this governor in California, to good effect. So I just think that this is completely out of control in terms of the steps that the president is taking, and the way to oppose it is through peaceful protest, which I think you're going to see across the country this Saturday. There are thousands of demonstrations that are lined up.
Peaceful protest, John. Good luck with that, to be honest with you. I said I was going to give you the last word, but on the same issue that I'm going to ask Greg exactly the same question that I asked you. Newsom and Bass. All due respect to the Democrats, they could do better, couldn't they?
Of course. They're the AOC of California. I mean, it's political malpractice. This is going to be a complete loser for them. I mean, you mentioned the wildfires. You've got stores closing because crime has been decriminalized. I mean, look, an absolute mess. And I thought Newsom was starting to pivot to the center. He did Joe Rogan. He was starting to, kind of maybe get away from these radical progressive policies, but he's been sucked right back in. And I think this is, and this is why the polling is really supportive. Deportation, mass deportation, is polling at 67 with Hispanics, and it's polling in the mid-60s with Kamala Harris voters.
It's popular here as well.
Absolutely.
Listen, John, good to talk to you. And let's hope that on Saturday, because they've called for a day of protest all over America, let's hope that those are peaceful protests and not what the press call mostly peaceful, which is the opposite of peaceful. Let's hope they're genuinely peaceful. Good to talk to you, John. Thanks for coming on. John Scardino there, Democrats Abroad. And thank you, Greg Swenson, chairman of the Republican Overseas Organisation here in London. He's in London now. It's good to have him back. Thanks, mate. We're going to go to break now. When we come back, your calls, your WhatsApp voice notes and your messages. So stick around.
I think those UK sanctions on the two Israeli ministers are really a grave strategic and moral error. And I think that's because it's not principled at all. It's some sort of partisan posturing, which is driven clearly by Labour's domestic politics, not by Britain's national interests. And I think that it's a dangerous double standard. It's not what they do to other countries. It emboldens terrorists and it undermines our allies. Israel is meant to be a strong ally of the UK at its moment of need during this existential war that it's fighting and doing quite well in, one must say. Britain is trying to throw it under the bus.
What the statements of these gentlemen that got them sanctioned were.
Right.
Because when you look at it, they haven't actually said anything so terrible. It says they're being sanctioned for disagreeing with the two-state solution.
Right.
After October 7th, 2023.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I mean, I tell you the issue that is really concerning everybody today. It's the migrant crisis. I know we do this day in, day out, but it's come into sharp focus today. Because Rachel from Accounts, has announced another £280 million for the Border Security Command, chucking more money into the abyss, digging ever deeper into the whole of this failed policy to smash the gangs. You know, it hasn't smashed any gangs. They're not going to smash any gangs, and yet they're giving them £280 million more pounds. Plus, and this is the doozy, Rachel Reeves said in the Commons today that by the end of this Parliament, so it's like 4 years' time, they will have got every single asylum seeker out of the hotels. Well, first of all, why 4 years? Can't you do it quicker than that? Secondly, where is your solution for stopping the boats? No mention of that. So she implicitly sort of declared, oh, this is going to go on. We're just going to get them out of the hotels. So begging the question, where? Where are you going to put them? No answer, came the reply. James Murray, the Labour minister today, 9 times could not answer that question, that basic question. Jeremy Kyle on Drive Time, just before I came on. James, he said, where are you going to put these asylum seekers when you get them out of the hotels? He could not answer. So no solution to stopping the boats. No idea about stopping the boats. Going to get them out of the hotels. Don't know where we're going to put them. I know where they're going to put them. They're going to put them in council houses, in social houses. They're going to put them on the top of the queue. So British citizens, legal British citizens who've been waiting years won't get a house, but these people who just broke into the country illegally, top of the list, they get a house. That's what's going to happen. Plus, we carry on setting fire to money by giving it to the useless Border Security Command, who have so far caught the square root of 0 people smuggling gangs. It's ridiculous. 03444 991 before we go to the first call, I've got lots of WhatsApp voice notes and they're all on the migrants. Here's Rob.
Evening, Kevin. They're not trying to reduce the boats. We all know that. It's not rocket science. If you want to stop them, you stop them. And as soon as we wake up to that fact, mate, then we all understand that they are enabling illegal immigration. We can talk about it all we like, but unless we stop the benefits, you stop the incentive, the whole thing will end. And as long as Starmer gives out the benefits, then the boats will continue. That's what he wants. He's a globalist. That's the bottom line, mate.
I tend to agree with you, Rob. Stop the benefits, stop giving them money for the legal aid, for the lawyers to fight their case to stay here. Better still, stop them getting here. Stop the boats. Turn them around in the middle of the channel. But if you can't do that, and I think you can, by the way, but if you can't, don't allow them into the country. Detain and deport. Get rid of them. We've got to do something dramatic here. Otherwise, this is going to get worse and worse and worse. So let's go to the phones and talk to Chris in Epsom, who wants to actually talk about Gibraltar. Hi, Chris. What would you like to say?
I want to do Gibraltar and the immigration.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Which one do you want to do first?
I'll try and do it as quick as I can.
Do Gibraltar. Don't be too long.
All right, Gibraltar, right? What an insult to the British people. We're going to have to fly to Gibraltar and produce our passports to go to a British territory to an armed foreign police officer.
I know.
Right? Don't forget that. He's agreed to have. He's putting their border force in Gibraltar on British territory. Carrying on.
It's just handing our border to the EU, and that's not acceptable. Yeah. And they say, oh, well, the Spanish have been causing so many problems, this will make it easier for Gibraltarians. I'm sure it will, but I think we should just say, well, you know, you carry on making problems, Spain, but we are not giving the EU control of our border, end of. Instead, Lammy, of course, has betrayed Brexit by giving the control of the border to Brussels. Right, let's move on to the migrant crisis. What would you like to say?
Right, migrant crisis. Oh, but by the way, that was let out today because
I know. Good day to bury bad news. I know.
Yeah. Right, migrant crisis. Right, so she's going to build all these houses, and they're going to go to the migrants. Right, she's removed or decriminalising homelessness. So tent cities are going to appear. This is chaos. This is what they want. They are not stupid, Kevin.
They are.
This is a plan. No, this is a plan.
Nah. They're just using. Well, yeah. There's a vague kind of sort of socialist ideological plan to all of this. You know, soak the rich, help the underprivileged, be kind, and all that crap.
No, it's got nothing to do with that.
But they're not clever, mate. They're not clever.
They are clever. They're following the West agenda.
Yeah. Well, if they're clever, I'd hate to see stupid.
Right, don't forget, Christine Lagarde is now leaving the EU to go and take over the West, who's a lawyer, human rights lawyer, who's very close to Starmer.
Well, let's talk about the migrant. I don't want to. What do you want to say about the migrant crisis?
We need to stop the boats. We need.
Yeah. I agree with you.
The pull factor. The pull factor is what's doing it. And also, if you read, which I've done, if you read the ECHR, all right, there are 5 reasons that people can't claim a right to a family life in this country.
I know that, and the judges choose to interpret it in a different way. I know if they fancied it, they could use the ECHR to deprive people of claiming the right to a family life, but they don't. So the best thing we could do is leave the ECHR. Chris, look, I'm taking your point. I've got to move on. I've got other calls, but thank you for ringing. Chris in Epsom there. Let's go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Philip, who's in Dover on the front line. So that next, stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'll just read a couple of messages before we go back to the phones. This is Ray from Liverpool, but he's listening in Crete. Very nice. Good evening, Kev. Now that Gibraltar has an open border with Spain, does this mean that illegal migrants can cross into Gibraltar and claim asylum in the UK? Almost certainly, Ray. Just another way of getting asylum in this country. But interesting point. Here is Nikki. The next thing Donald Trump will do is dress up in military fatigues despite his bone spurs. I don't know what that means. And he'll order live rounds to be shot at protesters, mark my words. That's Nikki in Kent. Well, he's already ordered them to fire rubber bullets at them and, obviously tear gas and all that. So that's already happening. I don't suppose he'll order live rounds, but it's certainly kicking off in America, and I think on Saturday, the day of peaceful protest all across America, I doubt whether that will be all that peaceful. So it's kicking off in the States. Here's Pete the Mole. Pre-planned destruction of this country before reform get into power. Something fishy is going on, to say the least. So he thinks that the Labour are busy destroying this country to make sure that if Reform win the next election, they've got nothing to inherit. And what else we got? About Gibraltar, this is Sharon. I think Starmer is covering something up. Is he giving, or has he given Gibraltar to Spain, just like the Chagos fiascos? God help this country. Hasn't quite given the Gibraltar to Spain or the EU, but he's given our border to the EU, and that seems to me to be wrong. Quick WhatsApp voice note, Sally on the migrants.
Hi, Kev. As far as the French are concerned, I don't understand why they can't just blockade the roads that go towards the beaches and impound anything that looks like a boat or is a boat before it even reaches the beaches. And in regard to the asylum accommodation, Paris Council are in the process or have already agreed funding with the Home Office to build purely social housing for asylum seekers for the next 10 years, after which time it will be given back to the council. I'm not sure that the asylum seekers will be leaving after that time.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sally. I don't suppose they'll ever be giving that accommodation back to the government because they probably need it for asylum seekers forevermore. Brilliant, isn't it? Let's go to Philip in Dover, right on the front line of the migrant crisis. Hi, Philip. Seen any boats coming over today?
Yeah, hi Kevin. Great show. Very fast moving though, because I called about Gibraltar in a sort of light-hearted manner. But in Dover, down in Kent here, we can guess by the weather how many will come over.
Yeah, well, the sun have got...
Tonight,
yeah, go on.
Tonight there'll be another 230, 40.
Do you think, yeah? Because the Sun have got pictures of them all leaving the northern beaches of France.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, if there's a full moon,
I've got this feeling it's going to be a big day when we get the statistics tomorrow. I think you're right. But anyway,
the solution, the Gibraltar point I was going to make is maybe all the monkeys there. I don't know if you've been there, but the monkeys on the rock aren't particularly pleasant. And maybe Starmer should have done a deal for the Spanish to go and look after them.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
I had an experience in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco with similar monkeys. I was with a group of female American tourists.
Yeah.
And these monkeys appeared on the wall opposite, and they behaved very badly.
I know what they do. I've seen it.
Where? In Gibraltar?
In Gibraltar. I know what they do. It's not nice.
Maybe Keir Starmer could have a few in his house.
Yeah, well, he deserves it. Philip, listen, thanks for a good call. Interesting what you said about the crossings today. So Philip in Dover estimating that 230, 300 will have come across. It looks to me, I mean, I may be wrong, but we'll see the statistics tomorrow. I think this could be a big day, one of those days where hundreds and hundreds came across. Don't forget the last time we thought it was hundreds, it was more than 1,000, 1,195 2 Saturdays ago. So, and still they come. Quick WhatsApp voice note. Carl, again on the migrants.
We all know where they're all going to go. They're all going to go into social housing or into landlords' houses. I see it now already in my town. I walk around my town, I see people from different countries. You can tell they're from different countries. The 40,000 that are in the hotels at the moment, they're not going to be deported. They're basically going to all move into, they all become asylum seekers officially, and then we'll have to give them homes, we'll have to give them food, GPs, dentists, etc. And then they'll all be given permanent right to stay, because we all know if they try deporting them, which they can't because they won't leave the ECHR, even if they did, they would just come back on a dinghy and come back into the country again. So it's like a vicious circle. Basically, the only way of solving this problem is by getting rid of this government and getting somebody in with some balls.
I agree with that, Carl, but it's going to take us 4 years to get rid of this government. I think the only way of solving the migrant crisis is to start stopping the migrants in whatever way we see fit. But we've got to stop them coming. Never mind about where we put them. We wouldn't have a hotel problem if we didn't keep letting thousands of them in all the time. So let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to James in Wolverhampton. Hi, James.
Good evening, Kevin. Right. About this border control, honestly, what's just going on? I mean, it's a joke. I don't know if you've ever seen some of the scenes on Come Fly With Me, and the guy there was arresting people from other countries, and it was just a silly joke anyway.
Right, yeah.
What they were doing, but it's like a comedy sketch. It really is, because you would think that where's the accountability? It's a government department. What are these people doing? Do they just sit there in the office and just watch what's going on? What are they doing?
Pretty much.
With all this money? I mean,
no, James, they don't sit in the office watching what's going on. They work from home. When I say work, I use the term loosely.
Yeah. So the CEO of the Border Control, how many?
His name is Martin Hewitt, by the way.
Why isn't the government minister for immigration going to them and saying, look, how many gangs have you stopped this week? Yeah.
And this week?
So where's the accountability?
No. The question is, James. James. The question is how many gangs have you stopped ever? And the answer to that question is none. Zero.
There's no accountability, is there? No, Kevin. There's no.
Well, yeah, but then again, the whole strategy of smashing the gangs is nonsense. It won't make any difference, and it's impossible to do. Accountability, it's not really the issue. The issue is that this government is pursuing entirely the wrong strategy. It should stop the migrants. Never mind about the gangs. If you smashed every single people smuggling gang tonight, there would be new people smuggling gangs tomorrow, because the migrants are the customers. That's supply and demand.
Kevin, it's the wrong strategy. It's the wrong strategy. Right. What they need to do is push the boats back.
Yeah, that's right. Turn them round, or don't let them in. Certainly don't offer them free food and free hotels and free doctors and free dentists and free lawyers. That's not a deterrent.
I'll give you another story.
Quickly.
I'll give you a little story, yeah?
Quickly.
Right, you come on a boat. Right, you need any dentistry, or you need to go to the doctors, it's all free, okay?
Yeah.
You need to have a fill-in, it's free.
Right.
My wife went to the dentist the other day. They quoted her £750 to have a root canal.
Root canal.
Yeah, £750, yeah. And,
that's quite a good deal for a root canal.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy. I mean, this country is just going to the dogs. It
is going to the dogs.
Can you blame people wanting to vote for Farage, because Farage is actually listening to these people?
Well, yeah, exactly right, James. And thanks for a good call. And regards to your wife, horrible going through toothache. I know this very well. James in Wolverhampton. Let's have a listen to another WhatsApp voice note. Is it Craig? Craig on the migrants?
In days of old, all town halls used to have a vagrants bench, and if you were in the unfortunate position of finding yourself with nowhere to live and not wanting to break the law, you could present yourself in the town hall, sit on the vagrancy to avoid being in trouble with the police. And what used to happen was, when they tried to close the town hall at the end of the day, they would give you a coupon or a voucher to go and stay in bed and breakfast, and you went back the next day, sat on the bench, and the same applied at the end of that day, and you could then comply with the law and not break it. So eventually the council, because they have an obligation to ensure that you're not breaking the law, they would find you somewhere to live. So the reason why this wonderful, kind government are removing this law is such that it removes their obligation to provide housing for, legal, lawful residents and citizens. But don't worry, illegal asylum seekers, they'll be able to get somewhere to live. Don't worry about that.
I think it's a really good WhatsApp voice note there from Craig. I agree with what you're saying there, Craig, but I also think they want to decriminalise homelessness so that the police won't be able to move homeless people on tent cities. They won't be able to do anything about it. That's what I think is at the bottom of this. Let's go to break. When we come back, more of your calls and more of your messages. Stick around.
The great con is upon us. It started with Rishi Sunak when he began to say, I'm fast-tracking numbers of people through the asylum process. Is they're shifting the concern from national government and the Home Office onto local authorities and council tax and council housing and social housing. And that is disgraceful. It's dishonest. 30 or 40 or even more, 50% of people who are not British born, but those coming and gaining indefinite leave to remain, because that's what's happening in many districts and towns across the country.
I think those UK sanctions on the two Israeli ministers are really a grave strategic and moral error. And I think that's because it's not principled at all. It's some sort of partisan posturing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
By the way, I love Elon Musk apologising for his tweets last week about the president, Donald Trump, effectively at one point calling him a practising paedophile, which of course is an outrageous allegation and not true. He now regrets those tweets. Yeah, I'll bet you do, Elon, but let me tell you something, mate. The damage is done. Anyway, a quick message here. This is from Martin in Cambridgeshire. He says, I'm strongly against the burqa. However, I wonder what would happen to these women if the burqa were to be banned. I worry that being viewed as second-class citizens by their own culture, some of these women simply would no longer be allowed out of the house by their husbands. I think there are so many ramifications of this argument, and we need to have this debate. We need to listen to people like Martin. We need to listen to people who are in favour of the burqa. We've got to talk about it. At the moment, we have a political society that wants to close this debate down, not allow it to happen, and that's all wrong. Quick WhatsApp voice note. Mark on the migrants.
Hi, Kev. Labour are going to stop the boats, mate. Great news, fantastic news. There's one thing people just really haven't seemed to picked up on. British territory now has an open border in the Schengen zone of Europe. Any migrant in Europe can now, without any ID, walk into British territory. Now, Gibraltar aren't going to be able to house these people, are they? So guess what? Labour are going to be getting them on the ferries to bring them back to mainland Britain. And it'll all be perfectly legal and above board. Just have a little think about that.
It's an interesting proposition. I wonder if that might happen. It could happen, yeah, it could happen. We'll wait with bated breath. Let's go to Paul in Liverpool. Hi, Paul.
Kevin, I've got the solution. Instead of paying 500 million to the French to get the boats or whatever they're not doing, why not just offer Englishmen £10,000 a boat to come from England to go to the beaches and just cut the boats and get £10,000? It'd be thousands over there. You'd literally stop it.
It wouldn't be a bad idea, but you can't really do that in a foreign country. You know what I mean?
Well, stop us.
You can't send.
They're not stopping the boats, and they ain't going to stop us, are they?
No. Well, that you couldn't. You can't actually do. You can't get a government to send a load of British people into a foreign country to start puncturing boats. You just can't do that. It's a nice idea, but it ain't going to happen, is it?
It's a good idea, though.
It is in theory, but, you know, France is a sovereign territory. How would you feel about it if the French suddenly said, we're sending hundreds of French guys over here, I don't know, to, you know, clean up your streets or something? I mean...
Well, no, if we were sending thousands of people over there, I wouldn't blame them.
Yeah, I know, but it's just it's a good idea, Paul, but it ain't going to happen. That isn't the way things are done. Listen, good to talk, though, mate. Thanks for the call. Here is Daz on the migrants. What's that voice note?
Evening, Kev. Now, surely if old Rachel from accounts is bunging the border security claptrap another 280 million quid of my money, our money, that's an admission that it's failing, because old two-tier free gear kept telling us before you came in, everything's prepared, everything's costed. So I want everybody that interviews any plank from Labour and say, well, if you've had to give them another 280 million, that just shows it's not working, and you'll give them more money next year and more money the year after that to do the square root of nothing.
Yeah, that 280 million quid that Rachel from accounts pledged to the Border Security Command today The Border Security Command in 11 months having stopped absolutely no gangs whatsoever, smashed no gangs. They've done nothing. They've achieved nothing. That 280 million quid was merely to suggest that the problem so far has been not enough money. So Labour are trying to say our useless, failed, doomed to disaster policy was right, it just needed more investment. So here's another 280 million quid. That won't achieve anything, I guarantee it. I absolutely guarantee it. Let's have a quick, see if we can get a blimey. I've got a text here. It's about the size of a book. My God, that's long. I'm gonna let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Bridget in Suffolk. Hi, Bridget.
Hi, Kevin. I seriously believe that he's clearing out the United Kingdom's bank account. He's doing it deliberately, and as Isabelle Oakshot said, diminishing Britain.
I think it's diminishing Britain. This she's talking about.
You know what she said, and if you could, when he said harder and faster, he's deliberately spending. He knows what he's doing. He's no fool, because he's wrecking us. He's wrecking us as people and wrecking his country. If you want to be overdrawn and be completely broke, what do? Spend. Because it's not his money.
I think you're right. He's in danger. They're both in danger of bankrupting the country. This spending review, if they actually come through with everything they promised, stand by for massive tax rises. That's the only way they can fund their proposals. But I completely reject the idea that they're clever and they know what they're doing. The reason we're going to hell in a handcart is because Starmer, Rachel from Accounts, all of that are hopelessly incompetent. It's as simple as that. Bridget, take your point though. Good call. Thank you very much. Call me again. Bridget in Suffolk there. And she's in the studio. It's Petri Hoskin. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Like you, I've been looking at the spending review and I'll be doing a show at 10 o'clock with Vicky Price. What was missing from this is
virtually everything.
Virtually everything is where the cuts are going to come.
Well, but there won't be cuts. It'll be tax rises.
Well, no, it will also be tax rises, most definitely. But nobody's really talked to her about these welfare cuts.